ahead and call this meeting to order. You want to start with introductions? Owen, if you want to start, please.
Owen Friend Gray.
Robert Kelly.
Carol Merton, School Board Rep.
John Moore, BOS.
John Decker.
Michelle King.
Tom LeVay.
Thomas Butkevich.
Jeffrey Morrison.
Michael Kevin.
Thank you, everybody. Acceptance of the last meeting minutes. I know Kelly sent them. I didn't know if anyone had, or Owen had a correction on there. I think.
Yeah, that was the December 1st.
Yep.
Yeah, that was just a minor note on present.
Okay.
How about we move to approve November 10th?
Okay.
Someone want a second?
Second.
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 All right, all those in favor of approving minutes, November 10th?
Aye.
Minutes from November 10th approved.
I move we approve the minutes from November 17th.
Second.
I didn't find them.
You didn't get
The
these?
ones I was looking for.
Okay.
I mean, they got to be in my mail someplace, but I couldn't find them. I was like, why do we only find the 10? So, I mean, that's fine. I
Okay,
can,
no,
I
we
can
can-
abstain.
They were in our
Okay.
packet that we just got tonight.
Well, yeah, I didn't.
But
see
he
it.
didn't
But
know
I
if
was
they were in
looking
the
for
email.
email to read ahead.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember seeing it either.
So, so you
Then
didn't see them either?
It was when she sent the 5 or 6 documents all at once. a couple
Yeah,
days
I remember
ago.
seeing this.
I was like-
I remember seeing the 17.
I have to step away to do some copying. I'll be back.
All right, so they got buried someplace? And that's why I
It's
was like.
one of the
I was-
half dozen attachments on
I
that
was
one,
trying
yeah.
to follow the minutes, and they were like all over the place. So, all right, I mean, I can abstain if that's.
Aren't we
if you
supposed to
guys are good.
get minutes within 5 days or something?
I don't know about
They're
that.
supposed to be available by law or something. It's really hard when you get them 2 or 3 weeks late. It's like, I don't remember.
I agree.
Same.
I don't wanna go back and watch it all again on YouTube.
I know, I mean, Lorraine was awesome.
Well,
So,
they're doing what they can,
Right.
so.
You got your tax bill, right? You should be happy.
I haven't opened it yet.
I already
don't-
paid
don't
mine.
need
I
it
was
yet.
done.
So does anybody want a second, or do we want to wait and hold off for November 17th?
I'll second.
I'll second on
I
the
said it, yeah.
17th, but I don't know if everybody wants a chance to read them.
I didn't get a chance to read them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we still have to make a vote, right?
well, yeah.
I'll
we
just
can
withdraw
still
the
vote.
motion.
Okay. withdraw the
If
motion.
people need more time.
All
yeah.
right,
I was
so-
just gonna abstain, so, because I didn't read them, but
All right,
if
so
you guys wanted to
we'll
approve them, that's fine.
come back to November 17th.
I would push the believe button.
We'll pass on the December 1st ones too then.
Yeah.
I was fine with December first one from.
That was quick.
Is that one good on with everybody?
No, that's
well,
the one Owen had
I make
something.
a motion to approve the December 1st, with the caveat of the 2 corrections sent where Michelle King and Owen Friend Gray are noticed as present, and Tom Lavelle and Sandra Jones are noted as absent.
And they
thought
say,
we
and they say
did
The
that.
It
printed
is.
copy has the.
Yeah,
They say that now.
it's on
Okay,
there.
that got updated on this
Yeah.
one? Okay,
Yep.
sorry, I just printed them out from a few days ago.
Nope,
Okay, I
it's
thought- yeah, I
updated.
thought we had done that like way back when, so, all right.
No, this was
So,
a
yeah,
different,
I'm in favor.
this is a different date. This is the last meeting we had.
So I have a motion.
Oh,
I
there was
think we
another
need-
day where it was.
Second.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor of accepting the minutes from December 1st?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes
Abstain.
accepted. Oh, abstain.
I wasn't here, so.
Okay. Just moving right along. Okay.
So, so the ones we have outstanding then are November 17th,
Mm-hmm.
and then.
That's it.
We just did
Because we didn't have the 8th
We didn't have it
meeting.
last week.
Okay, oh, we just- okay.
Okay. So we have the school budget draft.
So they're making copies because they didn't print, the correct document, but we do, if somebody wants to go through the tax cap calculation, we have that one.
So you've
Somebody
got
wants
the
to
budget,
explain it.
You've got default
Did you want to introduce yourself
summary, yes. We'll do
before we
that.
start?
Okay, so I'm Sue Levinson, School Board.
Nice to see you.
This is Superintendent Kumrian. We have Mr. Sousa, Principal here, and Mr. Campo has stepped away. so that he can make those copies. We did submit them, but for whatever reason, they weren't put into your packet.
Okay.
So Mr. Warren also has a couple of other items for an OT position, preschool, and a kind of an overview for you, for everything. So when Mr. Campo gets back, we will have all those items for you.
Okay.
And I guess we can start with the cap that went to the town. We don't think that we're subject to it, but it doesn't really matter because it's up to this body to determine what sort of increases you'd like. And this is what it would look like. We wanted to do the calculation and also try to keep as close to it as possible. Turn it over to you.
Again, my original intent certainly was to go through the overview document that I did send, and I know both I believe both documents were sent at least electronically. They may not be in the hard copy packet. But my thought is to sort of talk about the proposed budget in terms of sort of function by function and where we're seeing some of the bigger increases and decreases based on a number of different variables. And then, certainly if there are questions based on the actual budget document itself around specific items or whatever, we're happy to answer questions. But the overall document that I'm referring to is the one that says fiscal year 2024 proposed budget overview.
Yeah, I like how you broke this down for us, the big ticket items. Yeah, this was very
And I
helpful.
think it's helpful to do it by function area, only because then it just sort of categorizes it in an easier way rather than sort of individual lines that may be sort of spread out throughout the budget.
I don't think, sorry to interrupt, I don't think we have that in our,
That's what they're copying.
that's what they're copying
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, that's what they're copying now, so you'll have a copy in front of you shortly. But what I can at least do is, while we're waiting for that too, start to talk about some of the overall sort of fixed cost pieces that sort of go into this that obviously need to be factored into the pieces around where the increases or decreases may be coming from. So certainly from a salary and benefits perspective, there are certain increases that we are factoring into the proposed budget, sort of regardless of sort of the nature of, default versus proposed. From the teacher standpoint, because even though we're in a negotiations this year with the teacher's contract for a new contract for the next 3 years, based on the clause in ongoing teacher contracts, which has the steps of the existing scale in the contract being factored into the budget, that the rates, that those steps are factored in. In addition to that, for the paraprofessionals, because they are in year one, currently year one, this would be year two of their 3-year contract, collective bargaining agreement. The steps for those are included in the proposed budget. And then in terms of benefits, we have received the guaranteed maximum rates from Health Trust, which manages all of our insurances. And actually, unlike many years, the rates are relatively flat, which is unusual in terms of health insurance rates. So health insurance rates only increased by 0.2% over the current rates. And then in dental insurance rates, those increased by a little bit more, 1.5%. But then also extremely unusual is that based on New Hampshire retirement system and the retirement rates, those actually decreased and they're done over a sort of 3-year cycles, 2 or 3-year cycles. Both the teacher rate as well as the non-certified, non-teacher rate both decreased. The teacher rate decreased by 1.38%, and the non-certified rate decreased by 0.53%. So again, all of those are factored in, and particularly from a retirement perspective, that's why, as you will see with the retirement account lines throughout the budget, why most of those are showing decreases over the current year. In terms of just trying to go sort of function by function, the first function in the budget is 1100, which is regular education. And so the way I structured the document was to at least give, identify the increases on one side, the decreases on the other where they applied. And so on the increases side for regular education, there was an increase in paraprofessional salaries, but again, it's not an increase in staffing. It's just an increase based on the steps of the current collective bargaining agreement. We did increase because of just the amount that of spending that has existed sort of year to year for substitutes. We did propose an increase in the substitute line based on actuals of what we spent for substitutes. There was an increase, actually an increase in regular education teacher health insurance. However, that was because, yeah, I'll wait.
We can also,
That's fine.
safety question.
That's fine.
Is one package?
They went all together.
Oh,
Don threw us all off.
yeah, wait a second.
We'll get them.
Yeah, so get to that.
I think Tom's got extras in the middle now.
So there's-
One of the Toms, some Tom.
It's okay.
We passed them down, so.
Yeah, we passed them down, but then you're going this way.
Go over here.
So there should be a
Sorry, I
staple
think we overpassed
package,
on you.
The staple
a
package.
preschool budget,
Thank you.
and an OT budget.
I think we're good now. Or one more?
One more.
One more, sorry.
They probably have it.
And we're going over the 1100 regular education
Got
piece right
everything
now.
we need? Two pages?
Yep.
3 cents? You good?
We need three things.
Yes.
Three things.
All right.
Good.
I do. Yeah.
Alright.
I think that, so there's 2 staple packets, but I think
No,
that,
there should only be one staple packet.
One stable package and 2 other singles.
that's got 2, and I think he's missing a single.
Well, there's 13 of them.
I didn't want to print any more because I was afraid it was gonna cost too much money. So I was trying to
job,
keep that, down to a minimum.
You didn't use the phone while you were in there.
Or the internet. Turn your Wi-Fi off.
Yeah, that's a nice printer.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
I
Okay.
I like what you did
I think we're ready.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you.
we're back with
If
you.
everybody
That's
else is
okay,
ready.
no problem. And so, I was mentioning teacher health insurance, even though there is a decrease in, or only a slight increase in the rate, this would be reflective of just changes in specific elections of individuals in terms of, because one of the things that is sometimes challenging is that, open enrollment from a human resources perspective, when they have that, is in May of every year, which of course is after the budget has been approved. So people do have the opportunity to change their selections of what they have. So anyway, this is reflective of over the previous year that there was an increase in that. Both tuition rates for Dover and Co-Brown, there's increases on both of those. I will say that Dover, the increase is more based on a anticipated percentage increase. It's not necessarily an increase in the number of enrolled students, where the tuition for Co-Brown is a combination of the two. It's a combination of an increased percentage as well as an increased number of students attending. On the decreases side, we had a line in the budget for a permanent substitute, and through some shifting in personnel internally in positions, the decision was made to eliminate that position, so that's why you see a decrease in that line. And then, as I mentioned, with decreases in retirement, there's a decrease in the amount paying for teacher retirement. In function 1200, which is special education, as you can see, again, there's increases and decreases. From a teacher salary perspective, and actually this goes to the teacher salary as well as the teacher health insurance lines, the reason that those are increases is because it's an added position over the current budget. It's technically, it's the preschool teacher position because we took on a district preschool as opposed to the contract SAU 44 previously. And so the increases based on that position are factored into those lines. However, you will also see on the decrease side, it says tuition preschool, and there's a decrease of $161,000. So that is the amount that was paid as a contract to SAU 44 for preschool services. So essentially, the increases on the other side for that position are accounted for by the decrease in the contracted amount.
This teacher's salary amount down here, this is only for the special education teachers?
Yes, this is only for the special education teachers, yes.
Why is there no teacher salary number in the general one, the regular education up above?
These are just the increases.
Because these are just increases and decreases. So
The
basically,
teacher salary didn't increase?
well, it did, but what I factored in here was just the increases by that were an increase or a decrease of $10,000 or more. So the increase, there was an increase in teacher salaries, it just did not exceed that level.
Okay.
So,
I was curious on the health insurance. Isn't there more teachers than special education teachers? So why is the teachers increases less than the special education teachers?
sorry, say that again,
Because we
sorry.
added another teacher, so this reflects an additional teacher, which is offset
Teacher
by the discount in preschool. These aren't the budget numbers, these are just the
Yeah,
increase
these are just
numbers.
increases.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or
All
decreases.
right, I got you.
We're gonna see the full budget, right?
That's what
Right.
they're
Yeah,
for.
but this is just the overview of all the main stuff
I,
that's
yeah, I seen that
highlighted.
10,000 cap, but I mean, say something's $9,000, we won't see it, you know what I mean?
Sure, we do the same thing with CIP, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and so all of the actual amounts that are being proposed in the budget are obviously in the budget document, which of course, you know, there's certainly, if there's questions about individual lines, we can certainly do that as well. And the other increases, in terms of the, you know, like above, there's, special ed paraprofessionals, there's a special ed secretary salary, and the reason that that's an increase as it is because, again, we had internal personnel shifts, and the, amount that we're compensating the person currently is more than what we were compensating the last individual.
That was a change from a school year to a full year position.
Right, and it was also-
That's the reason that it's such a.
Correct, yes, it was an extended, contract, a longer contract. There's increases in out-of-district tuition, which is the tuition non-public elementary and tuition non-public high school. And just as a brief explanation on that front, as of last year in 21-22, we had 2 out-of-district students. We have seen a significant increase between last year and this year in out-of-district students, and that's accounting for the increase, is that we have 4 additional out-of-district students compared to 4 additional, so 6 total compared to the 2 last year. But only one of those 4 was a student that was placed by our student teams here in Nottingham. The others were, one was because of a move-in, that we had a student move in to district, and the other 2 were court-placed students. So again, those were, in a sense, out of our hands. We have a component that we pay for in terms of the educational cost, but there's also, depending on the overall cost, there's pieces that the state pays as well.
So this tuition non-public elementary high school, that together, that's 4 students?
Well,
Six, I thought six.
Four new
Again,
ones, four
this
new
is-
ones,
This
six
is
more
the
additional.
this is the increase.
Oh, okay, four additional.
So,
Increase
this is the increase, yeah, this again, this is just increases and decreases over the current budget.
from 6 students.
From 2 students last year to 6 students this year.
So it's an increase of 4 students,
Correct,
and this is the amount that it's increased.
correct,
200,000.
Yeah.
correct.
That's 58, that's almost 59,000 per student
I think some of them
increase,
were
not
only
counting what it
court
was
ordered.
before.
The, those out-of-district placements are
Yes, out-of-district placements can range anywhere between, $50,000 a year per student to as much as, say, $250,000 a year.
And so
Depending on the need of the
Right.
student and
Plus
the placement.
transportation.
Plus
Yeah, I know,
transportation.
we saw one that was like 50 in transportation.
Yes.
So the court-ordered
But
ones, I
that-
guess you have nothing to do with that one. The other ones, they're up to the school's discretion then?
It's basically, a team of individuals for that student who, based on a discussion of all of the data surrounding the needs of that student, there are some times where the district decides that they just can't meet the needs of that student in-house, and that they need specialized programming that we can't provide, so.
So by law, you're required to provide a free and appropriate education.
Correct.
The governing body has no input into any of this, so this is all done within the school based on the committees with parents and experts, so.
Correct. So, in terms of the decreases you will see in special education, we did see, in addition to, I already mentioned the preschool line, the contracted preschool line, we also had a significant decrease in the amount that we pay for paraprofessional support at the high school level for students that need paraprofessional support over this year's budget. So again, that shows a significant decrease. So those are sort of the main areas. And then in the other sections as well, what I did is I listed each function area, but if there were not any significant increases or decreases in that function area, that's where I said none.
Okay.
So there, obviously, there may be some minor increases and decreases, but nothing significant.
They just passed out the budget
full budget
here, the
document.
full budget, and what, he's given us is the breakdown of it, so while we're talking about these items, be looking in the budget too, in case you see something that isn't on here that you would like to ask him.
Is there another copy of the overview for Sandra?
She can have mine, 'cause I got one on my computer.
Thank you.
I think it was a
We can
spare.
share.
We've got an extra.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next section that saw increases and decreases was function 2100, which actually is there are several sub-functions to that area, but sort of listed out what those areas were: guidance, nursing, specific contracted specialists, speech and OT, those kinds of areas. What we have seen, as you will see by the increases, is specifically in the area of English as a second language, as well as for specific sort of highly specialized behavior analysis support. We've seen increases in the need in those areas, so that is a factor of those increases. And then the OT, which also then will reference this other supporting document around the OT budget, is that, and what I did for both the OT and the preschool, which are the two that are listed here, are two that were specifically items that were contracted through SAU 44, which sort of wanted to give the comparison of what the cost of that was budgeted for SAU 44 versus what we are talking about the need to budget internally in Nottingham now that those services are here. This figure just talks about the specific increase, but this sort of breaks it down. If there's any, if there's any specific questions, I can also answer questions about that. In terms of the The next function area is 2300, which is a combination of school board and office of the superintendent. The office of the superintendent total here, which is what is considered an increase over the contracted cost SAU 44, that is based on some proposed increases to those SAU lines, and actually in sort of recalculating, because as we continue through the proposed budget process, there's also elements where we have to then make some adjustments to the potential default. So I just wanted to also identify and mention to folks that the default amount for the SAU was reduced based on some conversations that the school board had in terms of reducing in some of those lines. And so that total, just in comparison to this, is about $3,000 instead of $17,000. So just so you are aware of that. And then the next section is 2400, which is Office of the Principal. And that actually overall had no significant increases and only decreases on that side. And what I will tell you, and where some of this is coming from as well, is that when I mentioned earlier that there had been some internal shifts with secretarial staffing, that even though we had seen the increase on the special ed secretary, we saw corresponding decreases on the other secretarial lines because of some of those shifts and because of new hires that we brought on. So that is why that is also a decrease. In terms of 2600, which is the facilities or maintenance areas, what I listed here is we have an electricity increase, which is probably no surprise to anybody with the increase in electricity rates. This is based on existing kilowatt hour sort of monitoring of what we're using. And then propane, which we are currently in the second year of a 2-year contract for propane rates. And we're in the process of, and this note mentions it, we're in the process of essentially putting out to bid for getting a new fixed sort of rate for propane moving forward for next winter. So this winter is locked in at a rate already, but this is going ahead for next year because we're talking about the proposed budget. So the number that's here is not based on any kind of fixed amount. It's just based on current rates. But as soon as we have the results back from the request that was put out for the propane rates, obviously the hope is that that figure will go down. I don't know necessarily yet, but we needed to at least responsibly put in a number here that's based on current, because the amount that is the current fixed rate is significantly less than what rates are now. So what I think we're working on right now is $1.99 per gallon for the second year of that 2-year rate fix. And obviously those rates are completely different now, so.
What do you have for electricity?
Sorry?
What do you use for electricity?
I don't.
Eversource?
Eversource.
Have you looked into other companies where you can actually lock in at a fixed rate for 2 years? I did it personally, and I'm
I have not,
saving a
but
lot
it's
of
something
money.
that we could look
My
into.
bill went from 70-something a month to 130, and now I'm less than $100 again by going with an alternative. So there are, I still get my bill through Eversource, but it's actually with a different company.
Eversource had some of the highest increases. I believe they went up in August and then just did another one in December.
Right.
So
I
there's a
would
lot of people shopping
recognize that to
around.
anybody, really. So I'm saving a lot of money now.
It's a good
We'll
suggestion.
take a look at the energy supplier, and that's, I think, what you're talking about.
Right, right.
To see if we can lock in something.
Lock in for 2 years,
else.
yeah. So I'd save you a lot of money.
All right. And then the last section to talk about is 2700, which is transportation. And the first of those lines is regular ed transportation. So we actually have 3 lines in the budget. We have regular elementary, regular Dover High School, regular Co-Brown High School. And so this is, and again, those are based on the multi-year contract that we have with Dale Transportation. And given obviously the scope of the elementary routes versus the other 2 routes, that's why there's a bigger increase on the elementary side. And then the other 3 are special ed transportation related figures, and again, those are corresponding with the increases that we're seeing on the out-of-district tuition, because correspondingly, when we have additional students that we are providing out-of-district tuition placements for, then that corresponds usually with transportation costs as well, because we're obligated as a related service to provide the transportation for those students. So that is just, that's an overview, again, function by function of some of the bigger increases and decreases. But as you now have in front of you, you also have the full budget document, which what I tried to do also, and I don't know if it showed up on the copies, but I had like, I don't know if it actually came through. Okay, that's okay. But again, this is set up in such a way that, and what I tried to do with the overview document is also go sequentially. So again, this is set up in such a way that it starts with 1100 and goes through similarly through the other functions. And to just sort of give a sense of sort of how it's structured, and because different school districts will sort of set up their account codes in a slightly different way, that the, you know, within the dots or whatever, the second group of numbers is your function code, the 1100. The third set of numbers is your object code. The first number is always a 5. I don't know why it's set up that way, but the actual object code, which is a 3-digit code, is the last 3 digits of that 4 digits. 100s being salaries, 200s being benefits, etc. And then in some cases with the next set of numbers, they're either usually 00s, 01s, or 02s. That's just to sort of distinguish if we have, say, different positions within the same object code to distinguish different positions. So that's sort of how it's essentially set up. So I don't know how we want to go from
Thank
here.
you.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
I
What is
think
the
they just go
OT?
by function and ask if people have questions, like on the 1100s and then
What
Sorry?
were you gonna ask?
if
I
you
was
just
gonna
go by
ask what the
function,
OT
make
stands for.
Okay.
He.
Oh, sorry.
Occupational therapist.
Occupational therapy.
therapist.
Occupational.
Just a quick question on the substitute
He kinda went over
teacher
that.
salaries.
Can you say which line it is each time so we know where?
Well, it's 1100, 52, 5120
On the first page.
from the first page. It's actually on the other overview page also. Is that because of an increase in what you're paying per day?
I know there was an increase that was made. I don't remember exactly how long ago it
From
was made.
75 to
It was
100.
last year.
It was last year, okay. So there is somewhat of an increase over what was paid before. I think it may have been $80 before, and I think it's $100 a day now
For substitutes?
for substitutes.
Yeah, it was I think it was 75, and then they raised it to
75.
100. Yeah, we couldn't get any because Northwood was giving their substitutes $100. So
Gotcha.
we had to compete with them.
So just on that, although 37,500 was budgeted this year, we already are, I think we were close to 25,000 already expended, and we're only in December, so we did not feel that keeping that 37,500 is realistic, given that the 2 prior years, we exceeded that, and we know we will exceed that this year as well. So the board suggested going to 50,000 just to give a more realistic.
I mean, we still have COVID, it's not gone away. And
It's not just COVID too, it's all the
The flu.
various
No,
reasons
I know,
people
I
are
know.
out. It's just not realistic to think that we're gonna keep it at 37.
I agree.
So before we get too distracted, last time we went page by page. might that be easier to keep everybody
that's
on the same?
Yeah.
Instead of functional class, just because I'm gonna struggle keeping up
No, that's fine.
all of those.
We can go page by page, that's easier.
If anybody has any questions, if not, obviously move on, but
Yep.
just so
I
I don't
agree,
get lost
I
again.
agree, no, I agree, going through more orderly than jumping around and what you're thinking about is,
too hard.
got very confusing when we did that before, so, thank you, Owen.
Anything else on one?
No.
Nope.
Oh, wait, that's on three, never mind.
So do we all just wait till everybody's done reading through the page?
Well, I have a question on three, so I was trying to be polite, not jump the gun.
Michelle, do you wanna kind of guide
Speed it along.
it? So we stick to
All right,
moving.
does anybody have any questions about, page 2? All right, move on to 3.
On three, I was just looking at the health insurance buyout relative to the health insurance, it's a really small number. Is that buyout, which would be, I mean, the actual price of it in and of itself isn't pertinent to my question, but is that buyout fixed by the collective bargaining agreement, or is that a negotiable item?
It is, the amount that is for the buyout is it's a negotiated, it's part of the collective bargaining agreement,
Right,
yes.
CBA, okay.
Yes.
How much is that?
So currently, it's $2,000 per teacher, and it's, and this isn't,
And
we get to
1,000.
paras, it's 1,000 for paraprofessionals.
So you got zeros and the actuals for the last 2 years. Is it just, does W do that?
There should have been something there.
Yeah.
We never had zeros. That's something to do with the chart of accounts.
Yeah, yes, I mean, we've run into that in some cases where we've had to, correct some inaccuracies in the system that didn't, for whatever reason, identify the actuals from previous years, so, as we come across ones that we are pretty sure would have had actuals as opposed to zeros, we'll make sure that we identify what those are.
When the system cut over, that's the issue. We kept the same system, but it got cut over, and there were some changes made to the account codes, and those zeros are reflective of what occurred as a result in
Right.
some places.
And in most cases, I think we've found the ones where we've identified where there should have been actual figures, and we've made sure that those are in there, but, you know, there may be some that stragglers or whatever that we still need to correct. That probably is one of them.
I read that as not many teachers taking the buyout.
Correct. We currently have, I think, only 3 teachers and maybe 5 or
3
6
paras.
paraprofessionals.
This says 3
Teachers and 3
paras.
paras according to the note.
For regular ed, most
Right,
of the
but there,
paras are
but there's
special.
paraprofessionals in 2 sections. So we have regular ed paraprofessionals and special ed paraprofessionals.
Right.
So, but I think the total amongst paras, I think, is maybe 6 that take the buyout, but only, I think, 3
Right.
for teachers.
So they got excellent health insurance, I mean, I wouldn't take a buyout either. You know, most of my neighbors are teachers.
Does anybody have any more questions on page 3? Move on to page 4.
The cost of the, Pinkerton tuition versus the Dover tuition versus the Co-Brown tuition's got a pretty big delta. That's, given and we have to pay that in full, that's a non-negotiable item.
We have a contract with Co-Brown and a contract with Dover, and the calculations are noted in the contract.
Oh, okay.
And Pinkerton, we do not have a contract with, because
That was
it's,
just
you
the
know,
one
kind of
student.
one-off.
That was a 1 student,
Yeah,
yeah.
and, they are much larger, and I think that impacts the tuition rate.
Yep.
Awesome, includes.
They have Dover and Co-Brown have different ways of calculating
Mm,
their tuition amounts.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not super
19,000 per
surprised,
student,
but-
right?
Yeah,
Shown
for,
here, 19,000 per student.
yeah, for Co-Brown, about 17 for Dover and 14 for Pinkerton. I was just surprised at that.
It actually used to be a bigger difference. It's
Oh,
at
really?
Dover
Yeah,
and
it used to be
Southdown.
different,
Ogden
yeah.
has closed the gap a bit.
Co-Brown consistently comes in at 3 or below typically, and so it just depends. But I know that the Pinkerton rate is really due to, they've got 3,000 plus students there, I believe.
Wow.
What is the current enrollment?
But, yeah, so,
This shows 185 students,
For our high school
one
kids,
eighty-five for Co-Brown.
Co-Brown.
the-
These
No,
are,
no, total enrollment for Nottingham.
these are
high school and
projected for next
elementary.
year, though.
Right,
So
that
it's
was
not
my
current.
question.
I
So
would
that was the.
want to say
these
about
is
750
projected.
maybe?
Yeah.
the 185
Is that counting
is
the in-district home educated students? Because a lot of times when I see the enrollment, it includes people that are homeschooled.
You know, I think, can we send over though, just the most recent enrollment?
Yeah, and
report?
actually, that will be in the, that will be reviewed at next week's school board meeting, is the latest monthly enrollment
All right,
report.
but what was the number you threw out there?
I think it was about 750, but that would include.
High school?
Just elementary and high school, not like others like homeschools. Like that would be an additional number, but
Probably
K
about
through
30,
12.
35, if that,
something like that.
homeschool kids.
So that's over 21,000 per pupil then, in this proposed budget.
We almost have 96 students going to Dover these days, or that's the projection?
Yes.
All right, is everybody done with page 4? Does anybody have any more
The high
questions?
schoolers cost us, if they go to Dover, they cost 17,000, Pinkerton 14,000, and Co-Brown 19,000. So if the school budget is 21,000 per pupil, then our elementary school is really expensive? Is that the
No.
way that comes
Because
out?
you're including all the special ed and all the out-of-districts in that calculation, which are not in
They're
the,
not pupils?
they're not in the elementary school.
They're in the
Are they
budget
part-
though.
Districts
Are they
are
part of the
not in
750 though?
You have
They're
to.
not, yes, they would be
Okay.
part of that.
Right.
Then
They're
we're
not
spending
in the elementary
21,000
school.
per pupil.
But they're not in the elementary school.
Which
But it's
these,
not across the
Those are
board.
pupils too, Bowen.
yes, I'm
Yeah.
aware, Tom, but if you let me speak, the
He was.
185 students don't have the special education numbers factored into that. Those are broke out separately, so those numbers are gonna come out differently.
So it's not gonna be like each cost this, because it's not the same across the board.
It's not apples
Because
and
someone who's
apples.
in special ed's gonna require a lot more funds and some isn't, so. I mean, you could do it like that,
You'd
but
have to
it's not
minus
showing
that
a
out.
realistic picture of how
And do
much it costs per
calculation.
pupil.
The state does calculate it in a report, and but they back out a couple of numbers, I think transportation is
Transportation,
one,
so you're
and-
also, you're
and they-
putting the high school transportation into the elementary.
And they'll back
which is
out our
not-
tuition as well. So-
Right, but they don't back that out of our property tax bill.
Nope.
Yeah,
No.
so 21,000 per pupil is what this proposed budget is.
Okay, are we off of page 4 on to page 5?
I don't see anything.
Okay. Moving on to page 6.
Page are we not?
Page 6.
You might want to make a note about the textbook lines.
Yes, so we are in the process of now sort of getting back into a better flow with school back in, in session after COVID, where there was sort of an interruption in sort of the curriculum cycle, that they're currently doing sort of a re-review of what areas are sort of the focus areas moving into in terms of curriculum materials and that kind of thing. So language arts and science, which are the two top lines on page 6, there's an extensive account note here because originally we had tentatively had the costs that we were looking at for bringing on new materials for language arts and science based on some additional programming. But what the board had decided to do was to take those figures out. And I did note that in the account note, that the intent is to put those into capital reserve funds, because we have a textbook capital reserve fund. And so what we did is, based on the fact that the total figure between the two was slightly more than what the textbook capital reserve fund has currently, that for the second of those two lines, had put in an amount just to cover the overage. That would cover actually an overage between the both of those. But the remaining funds, which is a little over $40,000, would, at this point, be coming from capital reserve funds. So.
Okay.
And for the science materials in particular, the former program is no longer offered or supported, so we actually don't have a program to use if we don't replace the science curriculum.
Okay.
Wait, so this, when we say textbooks, this is some sort of program that involves like online things
It's
and,
both.
It's a combination.
Textbook
Stuff.
and online.
but it's something that expires, that,
They no longer are updating or supporting it.
does the new one do that too? Like if we buy these new textbook programs, are they gonna expire in 5 years and force us to buy new ones?
But you typically buy them in 5 or 6
Probably.
years.
Yes, I mean,
Right,
Yeah.
but all the science that we teach to elementary kids doesn't change every 5 years. We shouldn't have to be buying a new science textbook and new science programming every 5 years.
Mr. Sousa, do you want to speak to that?
The programs that we utilize typically have an expiration, and that's probably the wrong word, they update every 6 years. Some of them do have an expiration. In this case, we did have an expiration in our programs for the NGSS for the science. They no longer actually make it available to public schools that we had started with. We have a curriculum cycle of every 6 years that we look at things, which tends to be the time when you start looking at how books are updated, and there actually is quite a bit of new information that does come out, particularly based on the progression of the standards as they move forward through the grades. So it's not just about what we're teaching necessarily changes or how we teach every 6 years, but even almost you can look at it through a bell curve, or, kind of gradually. I'm kind of thinking wrong. Every year there's something new that they might be adding or changing what grade you're going to be looking at it at. Does that make sense? We might be doing.
And can you give me an example of
Yes.
something in science that
Yes.
changes in the 6
Yes.
years that you're teaching to elementary kids?
Absolutely. We started looking at, and we taught habitats and local environment pieces to grade 2 in previous years. So we did ducklings and chicks, we had eggs that we hatched, as well as habitats from bees' nests all the way to birds' nests. That now has been shifted to grade 3 in the standards. We're assessed in grades 4 and grades 8 on our sites by a state test, so they take into account what some of those pieces are as they build for that. So updating our curriculum and making sure we're switching around what some of the topics are happens every year, where we're kind of looking at to see, and every 6 years is when we typically see a major cycle change. The textbook companies drive a lot of that, I get it, it's not great, but that's why they have a 6-year change rate typically. Some of it expires, like we just did with the Stanford science system we had, and some of it's just an update. For instance, we had an update in our Wonders program, which is our ELA program, at the 6-year mark, and we didn't see significant changes in the program, so we didn't purchase anything new. We did update our technology subscriptions so that we could continue to use it, but we didn't purchase the new materials. We actually downshifted from some of the purchases we had before, because we found we could find some other things a little bit cheaper and also more effective for us.
So at presentations the last few years to the town and here, you said that the school's doing really good and that the students are doing real good and the education is very high quality. You're one of the best schools in the state or something. So if it's not broke, why are we fixing it? Like, why are we moving stuff around in different years? Why not just stick with the curriculum as it was?
Because the standards change, the measurement systems change in the state and the country,
And what happens if you don't go along with that change?
then we might not be looking so good. We might not be
That's
doing.
good.
But the students would still be getting the quality education that you told us they've been getting the last few years, right?
Right, but they're
It
they're
just-
also assessed based on state assessments,
Yeah.
which are driven by where those standards are identified. So if we, to a certain extent, if we're not complying with how that's done, then we're not going to test or assess as well, and which ultimately can affect funding and all of that kind of stuff. So there are certain aspects of this that we have to
Might
follow.
not watch it in 30-year-old
Textbooks
physics
are
textbook.
held.
Can the school commit to purchasing textbooks and instructional programs that don't expire in 5 years, that we have to throw out essentially because the provider
them.
cuts off access or whatever it is? I mean,
Well, we
you should
can't
get more than
guarantee
5 or 6 years out of
Yeah, we
something.
do try to look for that.
Is that what this is, this proposed stuff in here, the Mystery Science program and Study Sync? Are these all things that last more than 5 years, or are these subscription type things that can be cut off
Well, it
after a
says
few
that this is a
years?
3-year subscription, the
And down below
$12,000.
says 6 years, next
Yeah.
paragraph.
ELA is a 3-year subscription. That is something that has lasted and been around for a while. We anticipate it to continue. The science is the only one that I know of that has expired. There were some math programs in the past that have expired, but we changed over to those 10 years ago.
What did you do with the old science books? Are they still around?
We only have a few older science books. This last system was an online system when we switched over to the NGSS, which is the current standards national.
So, I think what happened was a kind of what I understood to happen on science was that the next gen standards were implemented, and we didn't do a wholesale purchase of books, we were just,
Correct.
stopgapping that at that
Well,
point, but.
The next generation standards changed everything we do in science almost across the country. And so what we purchased was an online subscription, because a lot of it was based on tools and things that we could use from online. We had the Chromebooks with the students in 7th and 8th grade, middle school, and that curriculum allowed us not to have to purchase major textbooks. We had, and we still do have, some older textbooks that we use as reference materials as needed. That system that was from Stanford, that's the one they expired. They stopped updated, they don't make it available any longer.
Does anyone still sell old school textbooks, the kinds that don't expire and subscriptions don't run
I
out,
don't
you can
think-
use year after
I
year?
don't think those are a thing. Hey, if you did, make a lot of money. Alright. Page 6.
Driven off those tests, which is the problem.
Yep. Alright. Everybody's alright with page 6, we'll move on to page 7.
Quick question on special ed from page 7, just in general. It seems like from what you were saying, I misheard you, is a lot of the special ed requirements in transportation are state level, federal level. If we have to take these students, we have to transport them. It seems like since it's being required on the state or federal level, are there funds available for that to cover it?
So what I will tell you is that we do get some supplemental funding, like through the adequacy aid formula. There are, there's a certain sort of above and beyond just, you know, in terms of your annual daily or sort of adequate daily membership, whatever the phrasing is, which is your number of students enrolled, you get a supplemental amount of money for your number of special ed students. So that's one source. We also do get some grant funding, which is federal funding that flows through the state to us. But it's, and there's one other revenue source, which is called, it was called catastrophic aid, now it's called special ed aid, which are for some of the high cost out-of-district placements. So what will happen is if it's above a state established cap in any given year, then you get sort of a prorated portion based on what the legislature has identified that year for, that gets spread amongst all students across all districts. You get a prorated amount and you get that revenue in the next fiscal year. So there are some of those funding sources that support it, but in all honesty, it doesn't really, I mean, it helps, but there's a lot more that's put on local funding in terms of.
Numbers are crazy, like, you know, transportation numbers are wild for it.
Because one of the things, and transportation in particular, because depending on what the needs of the student are, you know, you may need very specialized actual
Equipment.
physical buses, like wheelchair
Right,
accessible buses,
accessibility.
those kinds of things, which obviously increase the cost, so.
You said there was a state cap. What is that, and is that per student or per district or?
Well, so the cap that's associated with special ed aid, it changes every year, and it's a formula, and I can't necessarily speak to exactly what the formula is. But what it is it will establish basically what they take the adequacy, or the amount that's the per student cost that the state establishes each year, and then essentially what it ends up being is, I think recently, within the last few years, it was somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000, at the end of the day, what that calculation was. And so what happens is if your tuition and transportation and services or whatever for that student exceed that cap, then whatever amount it is above the cap to your total, that total amount, once that gets submitted, is prorated based on all of the students in the state of New Hampshire that are eligible for this special ed aid, and it's prorated based on each year how much the legislature allocates, which has never been 100%, unfortunately.
Starts out from a big pie and trickles down.
Correct, and it ends up being more
To
like
nothing. I mean,
50%, 70%, something like that. So you end up, seeing only part of what you actually have expended back.
And all the
at end.
calculations are based off what they decide, so,
Correct.
yeah.
All districts are not equal either.
No,
Is
they're
there like a
not.
ballpark
Poorer
figure,
districts
like
probably
what
get
these
more.
caps have been in the past?
Well, I will say, like in the last few years, it's been somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. The sum of that cap, whatever the pieces of the formula are, which I don't remember. And so, again, if you have a student that may be, $50,000 for the placement and maybe say $20,000 for the transportation, then, you take that 70,000, your $20,000, say if it's 50, your $20,000 over, and then that $20,000 is prorated based on the total.
All the students.
From the state of New Hampshire.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the Claremont decisions established that New Hampshire has a constitutional responsibility to provide an adequate education for all educable students, right? So is there like a maximum number? Is there like an actual cap? Like what if there was a student and it would cost $2 million to provide whatever they were asking for? Is
Then,
there like a maximum number somewhere?
There'd probably be a special situation or a special circumstance based on that one
no,
student.
Those are all based on averages per student,
Right.
and they're like really low.
No, I'm just asking about like
If
on a
the-
per
if-
student basis.
If it was
if
crazy,
we
it
had
was
one that cost a
skyrocketed,
ton-
yeah, then I'm sure it would be
millions of
special
dollars, is there a cap that's
circumstances
on
that
that?
we would get funding for, I'm sure.
If that happened, if that happened and it blows your budget, you don't have anything in your capital, you blow through your capital reserve, you blow through your budget, and that has happened, then you end up overexpending your budget, going up to the
deficit
commissioner,
appropriation.
and you end up with it's a crisis, but there's no stopgap to prevent it.
Not happening, because those services still need to be provided at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's weird.
So that educable word in that decision that doesn't ever get used to say like, well, if it's over $1 million, it can't be
Hopefully,
done?
we
or-
never have to be in that situation to have to
Well, I
say that.
mean,
So-
we got some in here that are hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think, from what we've seen.
Just to kind of get back on the.
Thank you, I was just wondering about that.
Just get back to salaries in general on page 7. Those increases that we see, those are basically attributed to the step increases.
So those are based on whatever step increases plus that new
Track-
position, the
trackable.
preschool teacher
Yeah.
position.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to point that out, that there are no other increases there.
Correct.
All right, if we can move on to page 8, if that's all right with everybody. Page 9,
Yeah, I got something on mine.
all right, go for it.
So, 1,200, 5232, the retirement certified. I'm confused if why there's an increase there when I thought the retirement stuff was going down.
This is special education.
Well, this is special education, and because the rates went down, but because we have the additional teacher in that line,
The
It's-
preschool teacher's included in that,
correct.
and so we added another position that didn't exist.
Okay, because the extra positions, that made that go up.
Yes.
Seems like a lot for one position, especially when the whole thing was average going down, but, I don't know. Okay,
It's a pretty, the percentage is like 15%.
I know, it's huge.
Yeah, the percentage, what will be the percentage for 2023 to 2025 for retirement, I think is 13.53% for the non-certified folks and 19.64 for the teachers.
This is a,
And that's actually down from 14 something and 21 something from the current.
Okay.
All right, page 10. Page 11. Page 12.
I have to tell you, I like this page, this little packet here, because you can go back and forth and you can actually see, done a nice job.
Thank you.
Page 13.
Whoa, slow your roll.
Yeah.
Well, nobody said anything, so I'm just
I'm
going
speed
along if
reading
you don't
here.
say anything.
I'm
Speak
trying to
up.
be nice.
All
You
right,
have something on 12?
what do we have on 12?
3 more lines to read is what I got.
All right.
Delta's that big.
First
enough,
year with
Tom.
glasses, I'm getting used to them.
Why is athletic stipends going up so much?
You're on the wrong page, we haven't got there yet, have we?
It's on 12.
so it's actually between 12 and 13, if you want to explain that. That you have to look at the co-curricular salaries, which are stipends in 1410, 5110. And then on page 13, the athletic stipends goes offset each other.
So basically, because when I did a review for the budget purposes, when I did a review of stipends, which are part of the collective bargaining agreement, and looking at how they were distributed amongst, non-athletic ones and athletic ones, is that essentially they were about the right amount, but they, for whatever reason, they weren't distributed correctly. So that's what, there's a decrease on the correct co-curricular side and increase on the athletic, just to make sure that they're in the correct lines.
Oh, you tricked me. I thought you had been responsible back here on page 12. So wait, athletic stipends are covered in the contracts?
Yes.
How does that work? Aren't these teacher contracts?
Yeah, it's common for having stipends in teacher contracts.
For athletics?
For athletics and for co-curriculars, yes.
Because they coach the teams.
The
Yeah,
teachers.
If the teachers coach the team.
But
They're
athletics,
staying-
Some do,
athletics is in
yeah.
education. There's no academic in
But it's
athletics.
Above and
If you
beyond.
only count
education
education
teachers
as
would disagree.
academic, then I guess you're right, but they are teaching.
Right, it is part of the contract.
Yeah.
But they,
Teaching team playing.
That's right. Working well with others.
So just to point out,
That.
when we get the contract, you can read about it.
Well, yeah, when are we gonna get that contract, by the way?
So the,
No, that's a serious question.
No, the-
'cause I'm hoping it doesn't come at the last minute.
the full contract with all the changes typically is not put together until it's voted on. The prior contract you already have, and then we'll present, I think
You won't see the
next week we'll
contract
be able to
until
present a
after.
summary of the proposed changes.
Right, but we're all
Have
wondering
the-
if we're gonna have enough time to read the contract when
So
we're.
you won't have the actual contract language, because you don't put that together until
only dollar amounts,
after
you said.
the vote, but you'll have the changes, the proposed changes.
We didn't have that
So you
last
gotta
year.
make sure we get the current one.
The current contract.
Current
with the
contract
proposed-
and then the proposed
cost-
changes.
The cost items, and it's
Yeah.
stipulated by statute when those are due, so we have to conform, so, yes.
But I think for next week, we should have the warrant article
You
language
guys
drafted.
voted on the tentative agreement, I wasn't
We
involved.
did.
So when you guys do the warrant article, are you using, because usually the warrant article for the teacher's contract says like, whatever, and then it has like 3 little lines where it
Oh,
says
per
the
year for each of the
anticipated.
3 years.
Yeah, it has like the anticipated increase in there. When you guys calculate that increase, are you using the same formula that you used last time?
What do you mean by the same formula?
Whatever formula you used that told us it was gonna be $93,000 in increases for salaries and benefits,
it
when we
is-
were seeing
It's
160,000.
additional, so it's.
The calculated based on current staffing, so if the staffing changes over the course of the 3 years,
that's
then the numbers change, but it will be calculated based on current
It's
staffing.
only additional cost.
But that, it
What
wasn't.
step and what grade each of those.
Right, but it wasn't all staffing changes that caused that. There were other things as well. The numbers were off
There were
every
no
year.
changes in their compensation other than what was agreed upon in the collective bargaining.
And yet the salaries and benefit lines all went up substantially more than
Well,
what
there
the
was the
total
public
benefits
personnel and
change every
staff
year.
and benefits.
Right.
I think it would cause that as an increase in
It's
teacher,
nothing like set in stone, even though it would be nice if
but
it
teacher
was.
retires.
Right, but
I mean-
Kathy explained to us the other time that, oh, well, you know, somebody can get a master's degree at some point.
That's in the
and
contract.
Right, yes, it's in the
It's a
contract.
step
But
track
is-
change in the contract.
Is that factored into when you
Not
do
if we
these?
don't know that they're getting the track
Right.
change.
How many years of history does the school have? They can go back and they can look at the average number of people
That's
that are
not
getting
an
degrees
accurate way
every
to
year.
calculate it.
You can't
If
anticipate
you
track
can't,
movements.
I mean, I see what you're saying, and it
If you
would be
talk to an
nice.
insurance adjuster, they can tell you exactly how you can predict and come up with a probability of these things.
Yeah,
And
that's-
you can factor those in, and you can give an actual realistic number of the anticipated cost increase to the voter. Because whatever formula and methodology that you've used in the past, the numbers that are put in front of the voters when they're asked to approve these contracts are always far lower than the numbers we see when we get these proposed budgets and we see the increase in salaries and benefits. And you can hem and haw, and you can say, oh, it's because of this and that, but it's always off. And you should use responsible formulas that actually come out with values that we are reflecting in these new budgets. And year after year, it's always over, which means you need to adjust the formula. Either add a fudge factor, go back, figure out the average number of people that get degrees and get steps from that.
Feasible to do.
Talk to an insurance adjuster. They can come up with a number on anything.
Okay.
So Tom, if a teacher left at 35,000, they hired another teacher at 45, would that have an effect on the total salaries?
Probably, yeah.
So when we put the warrant article together, it's a snapshot of the current staff, at the current salary.
It's just a suggestion. It's
That's
not-
like a moving target every
Right, but
year.
usually they don't move, you know, once my neighbors, they all got their masters and stuff, you know what I mean?
And you
This is
can't
what
get
they
them
do.
twice.
Talking about-
you know?
It's
I mean, I
hard
guess
to
you
move to
could,
another
but-
district once you
I
get your
know.
masters. Usually you're
Yeah.
locked into that school district, you know what I
Not
mean?
anymore. That's
Well,
changing.
because it's first
That's changing again.
in,
district
last
doesn't wanna
out, you
hire
know
the
what I
guy
mean?
with the
A lot of
masters.
people, you know, seniority too
Facts.
now, right? That's how it works.
No.
It would be interesting to know what it is year to year though, in the past, like how much it's gone up or.
Well,
See what extra
I
stuff.
mean,
we-
they all got
I
them,
know it's not a
so
crystal
it
ball,
just
but
takes
it would-
time to
it would
work
be
to get them, you
interesting.
know what I mean? They,
Yeah.
over the years, I know they got masters this year, the other one got it a couple years later, and, you know,
Oh.
it all depends.
Yeah, different people have different plans and
Right.
stuff like that, and some
What's the
people.
turnover rate among teachers at the school?
That's what I'm saying, it's
Just wanna
Very
focus
low.
on-
It's very low.
It's pretty low, usually they're locked into
So we
that
talk
district.
about, oh, it's these increases are because
Which
people
page
got
are we on
hired or
again?
fired, but there's very little
We're on
turnover.
page 12. I don't know if we're talking, are we still talking about the
I think we're on
budget?
13.
We can go to 13, because.
I'm just encouraging them to use a more accurate formula
I
so that they
understand.
provide accurate numbers for the voters to weigh in on.
Totally
I wouldn't say
understand.
your numbers are inaccurate at all. I can read them and I understand them, so thank you.
But John, the numbers that appeared on
No,
the
but I
warrant
understand what
article
happens.
3 years ago.
I understand how they do
aren't
their philosophy, and I
reflected in the
understand.
proposed
I'm
budget
just telling them
increases.
that I understand how it works. You don't understand, but I do. That's all I'm just saying.
All right,
Move on.
let's move on to page 14, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep, sounds good.
You're on 15 now?
Yep, 15.
Okay.
So the athletic total is up 24%.
Yeah, that's back on 14, right?
Yeah.
Tom, you have to take the two together. Co-curricular and coaching, and it went down by 3K total, when you add those two together.
Which lines were you looking at on that, Tom?
I just looked at
Bottom of-
athletic total, 14, 10, 20 there.
Yeah.
Bottom of 12, co-curricular went down 74.53. And 13 for athletic stipends, it went up $47.50. So if you combine the two, it went down roughly $3K.
Well, that went down, but I mean, there's $1,000 extra for umpires and
You
referees.
don't have, but those costs go up. You know,
Maybe we should just
you pay
drill
more
into
money
it
for it.
as a board, because if you look at it, it's like 10 grand every year, so we should probably just drill into it a little bit and see what it is.
Yeah, take a peek.
Transportation for,
Take
you
a
know,
peek
but
at
referees goes up too and all that.
All right, we're on six.
Yeah, but we discussed this last year about having to use
Yeah.
special referees and stuff, and it wasn't actually required. It was a prestige thing, I believe, was the explanation I received. That if you didn't have the official umpires or something, that it didn't count for something and could affect people getting athletic scholarships. And
In middle school?
I don't know if you remember this discussion.
Yeah, well, that's what somebody said, that's what's his name said last year.
Nobody's getting athletic scholarships in middle school.
That's why it was a ridiculous
Nate
explanation.
said that, Nate said that
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
Right, I recall, and I was like, you just called it.
We
Thank
actually
you.
do have students who do have received scholarships to high school.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
true.
To high school, maybe.
Already
That's-
accepted to high schools.
In Exeter, I believe there was one.
Related to them.
Key, I'm sure.
Pretty accurate.
I like Nate. Nate was good. He had answers. Last year.
16,
I'm on 16.
I haven't even read 15 yet.
There's nothing.
you haven't gone over 15 yet?
How many people are covered under this guidance salaries? Two
There's
counselors?
Two positions, yeah.
And this is in the elementary school? What does a guidance counselor do in an elementary school?
Well, it's actually two, I mean, it's actually two counselors. One does sort of lower elementary and one does upper elementary or middle school. And it's a combination of, they do classes, sort of rotating classes with different of the grades around, different sort of social emotional type skills.
This is social
But they also.
learning SEL stuff?
It's somewhat related to that, and it's also, they support individual students that may have social emotional needs. I don't know if you could, there's other things. you
Yes,
wanna
we have a
add?
comprehensive guidance program that our guidance counselors actually go into the classrooms to teach. They work on things like executive functioning, social issues, societal issues, things that they can work with kids on their academics, things that they can improve such as scheduling and orderly, how to use the basic structures that we have in the building, such as our wind time and recess, et cetera. We also do some mental health counseling. It's school-based mental health that they do themselves, things like lunch bunches, whether we get kids together to meet for lunch and talk about a variety of issues that are in the world and that they're dealing with today as students.
Family issues.
Social emotional learning is not their main component, it certainly is a part of what they do, but that's something that we do can look at school-wide as well, so we have classroom teachers do that. Our guidance counselors help lead that role. They help out a lot with what is known now as MTSSB. It's a multi-tiered system of support dash behavior. We have that for academics. That's been known as our RTI program. So they're really involved in the behavioral aspect. Students who have behavior plans, they'll go in and do observation to help create behavior plans. They'll monitor the students. They're a big part of our special education and IEP teams. A lot of the special education students have goals that are related and that to guidance, and so they'll actually go in there and meet with them. They'll be part of that process to help students. So it's really a pretty big job.
This social emotional learning stuff, is this a fairly new thing? Because I only recently heard about this in the last year or two.
I mean, there's been an increased focus on social emotional learning in the last, 5-ish years. I mean, it's always been a component of what schools have done. It's just, I think there's been a greater focus on it with the increase in mental health issues.
Especially after COVID.
And even more so after
Isn't there
that.
also a lot of controversy connected to the social emotional learning?
What connected?
Controversy?
What is that?
Controversy?
Very controversial.
Oh, I don't really view it as controversial. I mean, I think we want to make sure that we support our students as entire students, as whole child sort of focus areas. So it's not just about academics, but it's about supporting, their development and overall, so I think it's important to do.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 17. Moving on to 18.
ESL is English as a second language, yes?
Yes.
Moving to 19.
Oh, well, slow down.
Yeah,
There's lots of notes on this one.
Okay.
There's no biggies on there.
So this contracted services behavioral tech, this 10,000, this is a new item, or is this one of the ones where the actuals are missing?
No, it's not a new item. It's been, I think historically, it's been solely paid out of grant funds. But because of continued increased costs, we're looking at sort of balancing, having some of it in the budget and some of it in the grants, because grant funds they don't keep up. Like, they tend to stay relatively flat, if not go a little bit down, but the costs that are associated with some of these services go up. So we have to sort of balance and to make sure that we're able to sort of pay the full amount that we
Are you
need.
anticipating the grant supply going down by 10,000?
Not necessarily by 10,000, but we have, with the funds that we have available, because those funds are used for a variety of different things, we need to make sure that all of the items that we typically will pay out of those grant funds can be supported by that. So it's not just about the amount that is associated with the behavior.
So that's true with the school psychologist right above that. Those are the same grant funds, and because the grants can't cover both of those positions, so in the notes it says the full amount of the actual position. And these are not employees, these are contracted.
Is the contracted school psychologist $20,000 one, is that the one that was like 50 or 60 last year, and we cut that down? Because there was
So
some
the actual
talk
cost is $49,140 for contracted services.
Yeah.
And yes, that is a line that we thought
we reduced that last
60,000
year,
was
right?
what
Yeah.
we thought it was gonna be, and this committee reduced it to 20, which clearly didn't cover the cost.
We had an employee at the SAU that we split between 3 districts and then 2. And then when we became a single district, we're doing that, contracting that out
Contracted
on
rather
an
than-
as-needed basis rather than having hired.
Because
Right.
we were unable to hire, so right now we're fulfilling the need through a contracted service.
Right,
Okay.
so, but you've been able to pay it? There was a grant that covered that?
At least a portion of it. I don't think it paid for the entire thing.
Right, because we had 20,000 or
Right.
so in here.
Right.
Because there was discussion last year about wanting to like fully fund this in the budget, but there was also discussion that since it hadn't been in the past, that it gets paid for out of a grant, and the action at this committee was to cut it, because then it would get paid for out of the grant. And there was a lot of sky is gonna fall type stuff, but it seems like it worked out fine.
Well, so what we don't have is the actuals for this year to see whether we're overexpending that line.
Do you know if you're overexpending that line?
I don't believe we are, because again, one of the things that
Yeah.
happened was, because we've had to go through, because particularly school psychologists are so hard to come by, that we actually not only are having to do it through a contracted service, but we're actually having to do it through sort of virtual means only, because we don't have someone physically on site. So, I believe the number of hours that we're essentially using are less than we would otherwise, because of just.
And the fees probably less with it being virtual too, I mean. having
Right, and it
someone
doesn't mean that we're,
would probably
No, I
be
think
more
she said it's the
expensive.
same cost,
Oh,
it's
is
just
it?
less hours because.
it's
you
just
don't
less
have travel time.
hours. But, ultimately,
Savings.
I think minimally, I mean, we're doing okay, but it's less than ideal. It really, it's better to be in person.
For sure.
To be able to provide those services. But
Yes, I agree. But like you said, they're like slim pickings right now with whether you're a child or an adult, so.
And these contracted services, behavioral tech stuff, this sounds a lot like what you had said that the guidance people do.
So what guidance, the difference between the two, and the acronym here, BCBA, refers to Board Certified Behavior Analyst. So that person has a much higher sort of credential around and training around behavior. So what generally guidance counselors or counselors in schools will do is some of sort of the general behavior stuff and some, maybe sort of mild to moderate kind of behavior stuff, and this is for significant behavior need. So.
You see that IEP next to it?
Yep. So how much would it cost if all of the stuff that the guidance counselors do was contracted out to one of these outside services places?
They don't
Could
do
it be
those
done through that?
They don't do the same services, it's not the
No,
same.
and again, whether or not it's, obviously districts are struggling to hire folks anyway, but it's not typically been recently any easier to find contracted services even. So, and contracted services typically are more than if you were to hire equivalent person or whatever on staff. So it's usually sort of a last resort if in fact you have a position that you can't hire, that you go to a contracted service. It's usually not the intent to contract, if possible.
Can I just make one comment? I would think, and I know a lot of people that are teaching, that the guidance counselors right now are working 5 times harder right now with kids coming back to school that have been out of school for 2 years, especially, younger kids, really struggling to adapt back into that environment. And,
It would probably be a lot more expensive if we didn't have
Yeah.
them, because the behavioral
it
issues
breaks
that
down
they
in class, where they
contain,
go? They go to the guidance
Right.
counselor.
they would not be able to, creating more of increase in need for the contractual services.
You're saying this is due to all the COVID
I don't know what
stuff?
it's due to,
No,
I don't know.
but, I'm just saying it's even more intense now. So, they're busy, they're not just sitting around, they're working with families, with difficult children, kids that don't even wanna go to school,
Well, that's every kid. More, pretty much.
That's every kid?
A lot of
I
them.
went to elementary school, the kid that would try to sneak out of school every single day. And they would find him in the hall crying. Yeah,
Believe me, they work hard, the guidance counselors.
every day, like clockwork.
Yeah.
You would find a way to get out and try to go.
They do that now in Dover. They sneak out, go downtown, and their friends, they call them on the phone, they open the door for them, they sneak back in school. Happens all the time.
They're not getting back in school very easily now.
They are getting, well, my kids are telling me this. and
Those
they're
doors
seeing
are all
it.
locked now, and
They're, right, not from the inside. From the outside they are.
All right.
Which page are we on? Sorry, I'm lost.
19, no, it's
Well,
fine, we're on
before
19.
Before we get from, well, I guess it's mostly on 19, the speech teacher stuff. There's an slight increase there. I'm assuming that's just a salary increase.
For the teacher salaries?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that gonna be enough? Are you guys experiencing a lot more speech issues?
As of this point, we're not anticipating the need for additional services in that area. The one caveat I will say to that is that, our related service providers, so speech, OT, have taken on more than they have in the past because we now have a preschool program, and because of the preschool program and the added services, they are sort of taking on more of that. At least as of now, I think it's been able to be sort of embedded in their schedules at this point, so that we don't need additional services. But that doesn't necessarily mean as that program grows that there might not be need down the road. At this point, it seems to be meeting the need.
Has there been any impact, increased need for speech therapy in the last year or two due to all the mask wearing?
Well, I think some of that is particularly seen at the preschool level, because one of the things that we've noticed at preschool is because for at least the 2 years, early intervention basically didn't happen for students that are sort of the pre-3-year-old. And so what we're seeing is increased need once they get to preschool, because they haven't had as much of those services prior to connecting at the age 3, which is when
Like
it
the Head
becomes
Start level,
district,
like,
right,
yeah.
correct. So, I do think some of those COVID-related kinds of things, we're not seeing sort of the full effect of yet, and we may see more as time goes on, but.
On the bottom of page 19, the OT salary, it's zeros and previous.
Right, and that's because of the contracted service. So if you actually go further ahead on page 20, about 2/3 of the way down, there's a contracted OT, occupational therapy.
Oh.
That's the total that was paid to SAU 44. So the other lines, the reason they're zeros is because she wasn't an employee.
Right.
So it's only based on this year's what we've expended.
So there's an increase of 34,000 roughly.
That employee was an employee of the SAU, and then we were billed back, and that person worked exclusively at our school. So the cost rolled through.
Oh, okay.
All right,
I have a
so
question, I'm sorry, what
Go
page
for
are we
it.
still on?
I'm on 20 already?
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah,
we're at
go
20.
for it.
I had seen a contract occupational therapy, the actual 89 and 37, and it's back up to proposed 81. That's just,
No, it was proposed 81, that's what we just talked about. That used to be a contracted
Oh, okay.
service, and so it's zeroed out for next year because it's no longer contracted, it's now an
Because we
employee.
hired that
Okay.
person to work exclusively
And so,
with
like, those
us.
costs are then now distributed amongst
Yeah.
the lines
All the lines
above,
above it.
so.
Mhm. All right, page 21. Too much differences there. Page 22. Page 23.
Quick question, 22, just curiosity. So, line 5211.00, curriculum director health insurance. We were paying almost $30,000. Is that more than one person?
No, that's one person.
Wow. Really good health insurance.
So in your binder, we will be providing the cost of all the different health plans that we, that was.
Yes.
How was it only?
So they don't all
how
have
was
the
it
same?
How did it go up 10 times? More than 10 times in 2 years?
Different person.
So it
They would
went
have
from
different, maybe it shows a different plan.
2,300 to 23,000.
Well, maybe we should reduce the choices available.
that's what most corporations do, then you only have so many choices. There used to be a lot of choices.
Lot of choices.
Now we're down, I'm down like 3, and mostly, you
We
know,
still got a lot.
HSAs are
And,
huge
and the
now.
difference, that you will see is that there's, for teachers and paraprofessionals, the percentages that the employee pays and the employer pays are, part of the CBAs. For non-CBA related positions, including administrators, it's based on, what the employee agreement, individual employee agreement states in terms of what that percentage
gets
is.
paid.
What gets paid by employee versus.
So who would have been the person that okayed going from $2,400 per year to $23,000 per year?
And I can't speak to why the FY '21 actual was that much lower than the other figures.
Might have
Maybe they
been
took a buyout one year.
It may have been a buyout
now
that
they've
changed
done it,
to-
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
That's a lot.
for my family, we don't even pay 12 grand for a family of 5.
You know, what's your corporate?
This is the
part?
employer cost.
Don't forget the corporate part.
It's all out of my pocket. I'm
It's all out of your pocket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they just have great health insurance, is what it is.
They do.
You know what I
They're
mean? They do.
Phenomenal.
All the guys that work, the lawyers or teachers, they take their health insurance, but they take our dental insurance because they don't have too good dental insurance. It's okay. It's not the best.
Comparatively.
Compared to ours, we have
Yeah.
better dental than the teachers do.
I actually questioned that 2390.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
something
We'll look
doesn't-
into it. Will you look into it
Well,
for
and-
us?
Buyout based on a percentage of what the cost.
Yeah.
And just so you know, there are different amounts also because there are some that will take a single plan, some will take
Sure.
a two-person, and some will take a
Right,
family.
family,
Yeah.
right.
I got
So
that.
it depends on
Yep.
what they've elected as well.
Right, well, right, but to go from 10 times higher in one, you know, the actuals, from 21 to 22, just seems really weird.
It's
Well-
a personnel change.
That
It's
says
a person.
actuals, not proposed.
The
But that
former
shouldn't
director
say
retired.
Yeah.
Your insurance
I
that
don't
much.
remember it.
The insurance per
I think I
person
would have
is.
seen that
I
too.
know you.
Yeah,
I
but
pretty much guarantee that was
they
a
said,
buyout.
yeah,
Ten-
that sounds like a buyout because
But
they were
if it's
saying,
one person, then it would
Well-
have been zero. If they took the buyout.
well, the buyout was, teachers get 2,000 for buyout.
Yeah,
That's-
that'd
But
be
the
in the
buyout
buyout.
goes in a different line, right?
Well, I asked that
because
last
there's
year.
only
I
one
asked that last year.
curriculum
It wasn't
director.
broken
So this is-
down.
For this
This
section,
is
it's
the
only
line.
one person. So
Okay.
the buyout would have been in the
If
same
it's really
line.
bothering you, I think they can go back and
I
research
think
it.
we
a
need to
little bit.
maybe take a
Okay.
look at
Yeah.
that 2390.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I don't think, we don't really negotiate a lot of, like, different insurance. They have a set group to pick from, and they choose based on their family needs, and one person may have a different family need than another, and if you have
For sure.
multiple people in a role year over year, it could
Yeah, but this is like this is like one of the few positions within the school that's not like all union contracted, right? So this is like the one place where the school can go, you know what, we're gonna cap the health insurance at 20 grand or something like that.
It's all in negotiation.
If it
But
was
I do
buyout,
think
it
we
would be
should
like
just take a
2
quick look at that
Thank you,
2390
Sid.
and verify it.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to 23.
Do you guys even need a curriculum director? It sounds like the textbook companies with the subscription and everything keep your curriculum pretty updated.
It's redundancy.
Well, yeah, I mean, if all the instructions based on these subscription changing every 5-year textbook instruction plans, what does the curriculum director do?
Because the curriculum director is working with the teachers and guiding sort of how do you take the curriculum and the programming that's associated with the curriculum and effectively like implementing it in terms of instruction in the classroom. So she's working with different groups, elementary groups, middle school groups, you know, some that are across the levels or whatever in making sure there's alignment, you know, grade to grade, all of those kinds of things. So there's a lot that you do sort of physically here to actually implement the curriculum.
These textbook subscription plan
I don't
things
think it
and
would be
programs come with lesson
replaced by a
plans and
textbook.
stuff?
And initially, when we made
By a
the
computer,
decision to do a curriculum
robot.
director.
I mean, it is a good question, but.
We have a 3-district SAU, and because there was just, so much for a superintendent to do, if you look, you'll see that sometimes certain roles at the SAU will look at this and work with staff around being the academic, sort of head of the district, but they could never get to that, so we made a decision that we wanted to put somebody in, and we did see scores improve when we did that role. So they work scope, sequence, vertical, horizontal alignment, work with students. So that was the role, to really ensure that curriculum was meeting the standards, that the board has to look at curriculum. So that's how it happened.
So you're saying that the school did not have a curriculum director in the past? and that-
Probably, we did it, I'd say, when we did it, about
Mm.
8 years ago, maybe?
Okay, and then before that, the things that that person would do, those were things that the superintendent was doing, but because he was busy with the SAU serving 3 towns, he didn't have enough time to do those things?
Correct.
Okay, and originally when we talked about moving, out of the SAU of the other towns and having our own SAU, the plan was to get a part-time superintendent, correct?
We had a plan to do part-time.
Yeah, and you're not part-time, right? You're full-time?
I'm full-time.
So I would imagine that if, we anticipated the amount of work would be for a part-time position and the previous superintendent took care of 3 towns, is there any way that you can take care of the stuff that the curriculum director is doing here? Cause it sounds like the old superintendent took care of 3 towns and somewhat did the curriculum director position. So if this was something that he could take on, that could save us $147,000.
I mean, that is something that we could look at down the road.
Down
What we
the
got hit
road.
with this year, and I think it's gonna be ongoing for a bit, is the finance piece. We didn't have the financial piece coming over in very good order, so Mr. Humran has been taking that on, and now we have a BA. So that's what we've been struggling with, trying to right the ship on that. But the original intent of the curriculum director was, as I stated, to try to get that hands-on in the school, looking at curriculum and adjusting.
So I have no power to offer this, but I would suggest that if he can take on the duties of the curriculum director, we could increase the salary from 118,000 to say 135,000.
Hey.
Negotiating.
That would be a great deal for the people of this
We're
town.
trying to give you a raise.
They should preface that.
Sure that
by
it's
never
within his abilities
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do this.
I liked that.
Sounds
Same
appealing,
amount of
Tom.
hours.
Sounds appealing.
Just throwing ideas out there, Sue.
Just delegate more, delegate.
What is the,
All about delegation.
what is the top item on
23?
page 21?
Oh, we're on
Curriculum, resource, development.
The $20,000.
I'm trying to go forward.
So the $20,000 stipends for, not 20, it's 20,000 total for the summer work.
Yeah, it's work that is done, specifically over the summer to carry over some additional work, in terms of, again, more of that work on curriculum alignment, and, sort of updating pieces that, there's just, with the calendar the way it is, with the, professional development time that's available during the calendar, there needs to be supplemental time to be, for teachers to be able to work together.
So that's getting paid to the teachers.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and I think as a board, and I'm not sure we've gotten this yet, we asked for a breakdown of, the actually current fiscal year actual, because that work is done during the summer, so we've already expended the FY23 actual. So
Right, and
we'll be
we'll
looking
see
at
that
that as
next
a
week.
board to see whether that amount is actually being, because the year before, obviously with that being impacted by COVID, we didn't spend the full amount, so we wanted to look at whether we actually are spending that much.
Okay.
I only pointed that out because I didn't want people to think that the curriculum director is also getting 20K during the summer.
No.
No, that's for teachers.
Curriculum
you're right.
director is a full year position,
All right,
so that, there's no
Oh, it
extra.
is, yeah, that's right, it is year round, yeah.
page 23. Just loop in 24 and 25 if anybody has anything to say on either of those pages.
You gonna say something about the internet access, Tom?
I haven't gotten to that yet, but that would be
Page
interesting.
26.
Didn't think he was gonna tee that one up for himself.
Well, the town,
He had-
he nailed the town one pretty good.
Yeah, I needed an intro.
Well, I guess they're gonna look into the feasibility of doing the wireless link from this building to the
To the
salt
town.
shed or
And whatever.
And maybe,
the highway.
you gotta maybe to the school too?
It would be that.
It's too far.
No, that'd be too far.
Yeah.
Get a big satellite dish.
It says 13,000
And they can
for
hold it
internet
up, too.
access.
All right, 26
Yeah, I
and
mean, that
27.
is really high. It's a lot.
700 some monthly fee.
It's like one of the things that always goes up.
Is there a reason it needs to be that high of a bandwidth? I mean, are we streaming 4K Netflix in here or what?
I mean, I can't speak to, other than what this describes here, which gives a breakdown of where that amount comes from. I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to explain it. So all I can do is go based on the account note that's listed here, but.
We can probably provide more info, because you've got, those phones. Phones are using internet.
Voice
Showing
over
up a little
IP.
bit there.
That's the minimum bandwidth we would use. We'd recommend actually, if we could, and see what next year looks like, but up to 500 megabytes.
What do you think takes up the pipe most?
Well, you have.
Says a lease of a man's router.
With the Wi-Fi, everybody getting on,
Everybody getting on at the
Yeah.
same time, and you're looking at, not just the,
and their phones.
not just a Google piece, but then also maybe there's video on that.
Their watches.
my website. Look at all of our.
You need stretching legs, John?
Are done on the internet, and not just our phones or what, but also all the internet, emails, et cetera. Our communication and our backup systems that are done in the cloud are all done through the internet. I don't know how many homes have less than 100 megabytes now, there's not too many homes.
I don't even know what I have.
Companies that provide less than 100 megabytes per second now, it's the machines where the operating tend to go.
Do you have any choice in provider, or is it like most places where you have?
We've shopped around, if you recall,
Used to be
I think
higher.
it was 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago. That price for the internet was over $20,000.
Yeah, I kind of remember complaining about it.
Yeah.
We got, that was when, that's when everything kind of shifted, and we got, but we didn't enjoy what we got in that number, so we began to really shop around and look, and we wound up playing a little contractual game with some of the providers, and we were able to find the lowest I've ever seen, which is what we use now. And there's upsides and downsides, but so far they've been actually very consistent with what they provide. We've only been down this year twice.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Was it simple to be resolved, or was it a big thing whenever the phones went down?
Yeah, so when the internet went down this year for 2 days, it had nothing to do with the school, it was something that consolidated,
Okay.
had occurred. They still use some copper lines throughout the system, and a lot of the hubs are for tapping. To go drive through some of those boxes, you'll see they're rather rusted out and changed. They're still in the market, they're still trying to change it over to fiber, even on that end, but that infrastructure is expensive, and there's not a lot of interest for those companies to really do that, because we still need internet.
Right.
There's not a lot of games in town.
Did they say why it was going to be a 40% increase?
No, that was just the price they gave us.
Because
They don't-
frankly, like my internet bill is the only thing that hasn't increased.
I have
Who are you
a,
using?
I
I
have a
gotta find
question
out.
on,
It's climbing.
Comcast,
I have a
Xfinity.
question on
Yeah,
page,
mine
Once you
hasn't
lock
gone
in,
there.
mine hasn't either.
Do what? I'm sorry.
I have a question on page 27.
Sure.
I'm not a techie guy, so, the two line items, 5734 and 5738. I'm looking at the tech new equipment back in 2021, we spent $81,000. I'm looking at the tech replacement equipment that we spent 14 in 2021. Year-to-date has been 2,000. Proposed budget in '23 was 21, and now we're proposing 30. I don't understand what we're doing or how we're spending it, or, I'm not a tech guy.
Kids and computers.
Looks like
So a lot of the
80.
equipment in the last 2 years, we used the ESSER funding, because that is one of the uses that we can, we have a lot more restrictions on what we can use the ESSER, the COVID funding for, than the town does. And technology is one of the things we could use it for, so a lot of the purchases in the last 2 years were either ESSER or, yeah, there was some budget amount. But we, as a board, asked about this $30,000, and we're looking at whether we wanna use ESSER funding again. That's gonna eventually run out, we can't do that forever. So what we're talking about doing is creating and ask the administration to create a plan for replacing, so the Chromebooks and laptops that we have need to be replaced on, 5-year cycles.
For the
And looking
capital
at-
reserve, makes sense?
So that's what Mr. Sousa actually suggested, was potentially either creating a new capital reserve or changing maybe the textbook one to cover both.
So that expense isn't going away, it's just how it's getting
Yeah,
paid for
I
is
mean,
different,
that's why
so.
capital.
Yeah,
makes-
no,
makes sense.
I was curious about that line too, because it's, I mean, it's only 80 Chromebooks and 2 staff laptops. You kind of want to have a plan that replaces a percentage every how many years you're doing, so that it's just rolling, and keep it in the budget, well, you don't need capital reserve, if
If
you
it
just
just
do it in the budget.
goes.
Right, if you like 1/5 every 5
Right.
years, it's just.
Right, well, that's what I had in mind, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, at the last meeting, there was a request for inventory, and I think
Right,
that.
we're
so
gonna talk
would
about
be-
that next
So
week.
we're gonna be looking at that amount again.
Get an inventory.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
one other thing to John's point is that when you talk, usually in companies, you'll see roles, and those roles will drive what type of computer you need.
Mhm.
We'll probably get to something like that as well.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how the Chromebooks get assigned to students and stuff like that.
So it's 1-to-1 for sixth, seventh, and eighth grade currently, they all have,
Seventh and eighth grade have one.
that they use daily for homework and for class.
Now, do they keep the same one for the
They
3
do not
years?
currently, that's part of what we're looking at, is giving them one starting in sixth grade that they would then carry through to the eighth grade. But currently, they turn them back in for the summer, they get refurbished and cleaned up.
Which is probably smart to do, and
But the I'm trying to think of, look at Michelle, when
I
did
know.
Dover just started doing it
Yeah,
during COVID,
Yeah.
and I think they turned them back in. I don't think they necessarily got the same one back. I'm not
I
sure.
think
I
you're
don't remember.
right.
But I think they turned them.
and
in
even
this
if they
one.
turn it back in and get the same one back.
They may have, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Co Brown, you get the same one back, you turn it in over the summer to be
Yep.
updated for
Yeah.
your.
I'm not sure if
needs.
Dover actually gave them the same ones back or not, but that
I
was,
don't
they just
know.
started getting them.
Probably want the same one
Last
if you
year,
were
really.
making any payments on it as a family, cause you know you're gonna be careful. with it.
Exactly. Exactly.
They put a lot of restrictions on what they're allowed to install and download, so they can't put much on it.
Fun. Okay, let's look at page 28 and 29, if everybody's ready to move forward.
28's pretty boring.
Well, before we get off 27.
Tom, you don't have any questions on 28?
Printing, was that one of the ones that got zeroed out accidentally? It went from 00 to 2000?
Good question. I'll look at that. I don't know.
Thank you.
29, the audit expenses went way up, huh?
Yeah, so what, in talking with our current, audit organization, you know, and looking at what the market is that what we're currently paying, is probably a significant underestimation of what it will look like, moving forward. So this was just try to account for the fact that the costs are just gonna go up, so.
What does the school get for membership to the NHSBA?
So I know one of the major things that we get is we get access to their, sort of policy index. So they, with their attorneys and such, do regular updates to and suggested, based on, you know, legal guidance of what school board policy should be. So we have all of that, and then there's also, they provide a lot of professional development to school boards, on various topics, so.
There's training, webinars, right to know stuff.
They track all the legislation,
All
so
the
they do
legislation.
a summary of all the
You get a-
legislative updates.
You get,
thought so.
you get an update, and then you go, you have to fix all your policies, and they provide the policy updates, so you don't have to use me.
You guys mentioned that you have training for the people that negotiate the union contracts. Is that provided through the NHSBA?
They do some negotiation training, we've sat in on that. They do a lot of different, if you go to their website, they have all kinds of webinars. So yeah, they do some of that.
So in your opinion, it's worth the 4,000 or so?
I think it's good.
It reduces substantially, I think, what you would pay in legal costs, because if you don't have that, then you really are
And we
relying
can,
heavily on your
we can
external.
occasionally call them on legal things when we don't want to incur $235 an hour, and they will help us with that, because they have a lawyer on staff.
I can't wait till we get to that.
And usually that's what we'll say to the superintendent, call them first and try to get it for free.
I'm just looking at the superintendent's salaries there, is that a duplicate line or one of those gonna,
Yeah,
Cancel
the only
out.
thing that looks different is the
Oh.
description part for the line, I mean, other than the numbers. But
So I will say, just in Michelle, in your, comment about the salary, the reason that was, although it probably could have been combined, but the amount that was in the first one was based on money that was paid out, in the spring of FY '22,
Okay.
in terms of just the transition and the work that I did in terms of the transition to the
Sure.
new SAU.
so can we expect that line to go away?
What's that?
Is that line just gonna go away, the top one then?
It should
Well-
really say consultant salary or something.
Right, it
I
really
see.
wasn't a
Okay.
salary, it was
Okay.
more of a,
Fee.
yeah, a consultant fee or whatever.
Maybe, can we change
Oh,
the
no, it's
description
got
of
a
that?
tab.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, all right, there's a tab.
Because we were trying to make sure we cut things over clean, so we
Sure.
had him consulting on transition.
This is really a
And we
consulting
also hired,
arrangement, it wasn't
a finance person to do some work during that period as
hourly
well.
consulting.
Okay.
above that, the GASB 45 compliance line, it's 0 and then just a buck. Is that something that we're just trying to keep in the budget, or
You
what?
should keep that.
that
I'm
was
a huge one for keeping that.
an error that we should have, it's a, what is it, every 3 years, that we, one of those years should have had an actual.
An actual number in there?
They
which we missed,
calculate the
so.
total cost, even though you haven't expended it, for the New Hampshire pensions. And if you don't have that, you can't get an unqualified report. So that's.
And there's different numbered GASBs, like this says GASB 45, but the one that we're currently doing, which I think is in reference to what you're
50,
saying, is
54,
GASB 75, which is what we're, again, it's a 3-year cycle, and we're doing that this fall alongside the regular audit.
So all these
So.
GASBs that are required, if you don't do it, I don't know, I think it's sloppy not to do it. I know it costs more, but it's somebody else's money you're
It keeps it
playing
clean.
with. You want
Yeah.
unqualified reports.
So if you're doing it this fall, the 23 proposed probably should have had a number.
Well, we were supposed to do it in FY '22, so it should have been budgeted in FY '22, but it
Gotcha.
didn't get done, and now we're doing it.
Now we're doing it
in-
in 23.
And we didn't
which
budget it for
Didn't
this
have
year.
to propose because it wasn't gonna get done that year. I got it.
So they're working on it now.
All right,
Yes.
all right. Moving on to page 30. These are all insurances. We'll look at 30 and 31 at the same time. Moving on, 32, 33.
Is this postage meter refill thing another one where we don't have the real actuals?
Well, because it's a new postage machine, because it's for the SAU, so we don't have any of the historical, it's new, so.
Gotcha. Does the school have a postage thing? Can't
Yes.
just use that, or does it matter?
Well, I mean, we started to when we didn't have one, but it's really inconvenient.
It's
I
probably
have a-
needed for the SAU.
It's
Yeah.
for mailings that we have specifically for the SAU.
And it's probably just a little machine too. I mean, they get really expensive, so you're
Well-
probably just mailing out letters, right?
Well, it actually, probably the biggest use of it is for accounts payable, for when we pay vendors, like, we need to mail out the checks
Okay.
and such, so.
What about moving to paperless on stuff?
Well, we are actually in the process of doing that. We're actually in the process of working with vendors to try to go to sort of an ACH transfer route. We just haven't gotten there yet, but
It's on the radar.
But paying vendors is the most of the postage for the school?
that's what it tends to mostly be, yes.
Beyond just the SAU one?
No, meaning that's what, for most of the cost of what we would use the SAU one for
Right.
is that, so.
So we'll get to the schools one later then? Or
That's,
did we already
yes,
go past it?
it's in the next function area, yeah.
It's nice not paying that SAU 44 district assessment. We're paying for our own assessment. And that was just our portion of the district assessment.
Correct.
How often would we need to be assessed then, since we're our own little, or do we not get assessed?
Well, when we say district assessment, it just means the proportional share of what Nottingham paid for SAU services to SAU 44.
Right.
Okay,
Now
so
we're
we have our own
100%.
stuff.
We're assessed at 100% because it's
I
only
was
us.
thinking it
Well,
was
it's
like
right in
a-
the budget.
Right, I was thinking it was,
But it does, the town assessment total of that, valuation was kind of, but.
That's what I was
We were
thinking.
higher than Northwood and we had higher enrollment, so our piece was bigger.
That's what, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So when Stratford left, it got even bigger, so.
Where are you at now?
We're on 34, 35.
I'm on 37, so.
Okay. We're getting there. Alright, 36, 37.
So if I was to summarize the principal total there, it went down by 18,000, roughly 19,000. That was a reallocation of the secretary.
That, I mean, that was the biggest chunk of why that went down, yes.
And that went over what, to special ed? Is that what the allocation of the,
Say that again, sorry?
did that cost go over to special ed?
We had reduced one of the positions.
Oh, okay, okay.
Do you guys still use a fax machine?
We do, we're actually debating whether or not, there's still some, unfortunately, some schools and some businesses that reach out to us very fast, particularly around, but they consider to be private, email, so we're looking at that now too, to get rid of that system, because that also frees the phone line.
And radios, is this like walkie-talkies for people? So there's repairs and maintenance to the postage machine, but then on a different thing, it says that we're leasing the postage machine. Isn't the repairs covered by the leasing contract?
Where are you looking, Tom?
I don't know, I'd seen some, somewhere it said,
I mean, with toner and things like that.
yeah, like, page 32, copier and postage meter leases. There's $3,000 for that. So, that suggests to me that the postage meter is being leased.
Well, if you're looking at the page 32, that's SAU,
Okay,
not
so the school
not
owns the
school.
postage meter.
for the school.
Yeah.
I think it's at
Is it
the
all
very end of its
encompassed?
lease or whatever, but.
Yeah, it's a very old machine, and we still pay lease on it, we'll pay operations fee. Pitney Bowes and.
But we're also paying to repair it?
Where are you seeing the repair? That's the part that we don't.
It says, at the bottom of page 35, it says repairs and maintenance to office products, radios, fax machine, postage machine.
Yes, if anything goes down, you have to fix, like, you lease a car, you need new tires.
Yeah, it's
You
just,
have to put new tires on.
the lease doesn't include the repairs, like, they'll come out and check it out, but if
Right,
it needs
but
a
if
part,
you-
then they won't replace the part. The lease is probably automatic toner renewal, probably stuff like that, that they get services for.
Same thing with our copy machines, but now everything they don't,
Yeah.
use them as a separate.
So why not just buy the postage machine at this point? I mean, this can't be a very complex piece
Well,
of
if you buy the
equipment.
if you buy the actual machine, like if they were to buy the copier, then they would probably have to pay for more services to have someone come out and fix it, because
Well, the
nobody
copier
in
is
the
more
office is
complex, but
probably
the
a
postage
copier
machine, is it not
expert.
just a scale and it prints a label?
Well, we actually are, we just met, I met with, Mr. Campo and from the SAU office, and she was gonna be looking into that. See what the cost was of updating that machine, new one, and I'm sure.
I mean, it would seem to me you could get a scale, a USB scale, and plug it into a computer, and there should be software to print out a label on whatever printer or copier already exists. I don't know why there has to be a separate machine for postage.
So there would be a contract, right, for these leases then?
Mhm.
Yes. And
There
so then
is.
There is a
the-
contract, yeah.
Yeah,
And they're 3 to 5 year
So
leases,
operating-
7-year leases
but
sometimes.
operating leases, if you're coming down and you're paying all these costs, then you look at it and it's gonna cost you an arm and a leg to buy it after it's depreciated.
Yeah.
So someone's gonna have to just look at those numbers.
Right, right.
I would look into if you can just get a scale that attaches to an office computer, because what we're coming down to is you're weighing something and then you're printing out a label that has the postage on it.
And I'm not really sure what the expense is, looking at,
He's talking the postage meter.
right, what line is that? Good question.
I was questioning in repairs and maintenance, it says repairs to the postage machine.
And then,
And I feel like if you're leasing a postage machine,
Bottom of
probably
page
shouldn't also have to repair
thirty-five,
it.
it's $750 total for all of those repairs. Those are just examples of things that may need to be repaired.
Pretty low, and it's a low number.
That's a 50% increase.
Battery. Time for repairs, we said that we've been able to actually mitigate that because of some community members who have been able to.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing the number of the line, I'm criticizing how you're spending money to rent a machine for postage and also paying to repair it, and
Yeah, and I'm not
I think
sure
there must be a better
I'm not really
solution.
sure how the Pitney Bowes contract works.
Right.
They're all under contract, so I'm sure they could just take a look at them and review them. See if it makes sense to do that or go the route you're talking about. All right, I think we're on 36, 37.
Oh, there's postage. Is this primarily mailing to parents?
Probably not. We get emails all the time. I mean, they hardly ever send stuff out in the mail.
The postage number, the 3,000.
Yeah, just what, like, it's, because it says postage for school
For full
mailings.
mailings, everything we mail out. Sometimes it may be things that we're mailing out to parents, sometimes it's mailing out packages that, student records.
So you got 13,000 up above that for telephones. I thought the telephones had been moved to a voice over IP. Shouldn't that be covered under the internet?
We're on page 36 for people who want to follow it down.
So the 13,000 includes the voice over IP service costs. But there's also, if you read through it, it's also copper lines that have to be maintained.
It explains that under it.
So these are video conferencing phone lines, that's 11,000, that's the bulk of it?
It includes both Zoom and phone.
Just because you have VoIP doesn't mean that you have free phones. For a business like we use, there's a couple other companies out there that supply that. These are we put the
free to move us along.
That's what the Zoom is started with, so. That's why the video part of their contract. We're actually looking at the need around limiting some of the video conferencing we have. But this includes the price of the phone, the access to the phone services like voicemail, et cetera. Those are all things that you still pay even though you get the internet. You still have to purchase the internet. The internet just gives you access to go to when you want. You still need the software and the hardware to get there.
Yeah, but if you go look at the town's budget, and I could go find it here if we really need to look at it, but the town used to have different phone lines into the police station and into all the offices in here, and they all got replaced by VoIP lines, and there's now no telephone lines in the budget. It's all just the internet, and it's all in there, and it's,
These are
I
not
forget how
lines.
much, but it's not this much.
These are not lines, these are accounts, and we have significantly larger number of people working at the school here. So these are accounts that give us that. The only lines that we have are the 3 copper lines. One that's dedicated for the elevator. which is
16
sliding down,
for use of internet service.
And then 2 others, one is, for the
Comcast bill.
John, you said it was 16?
Intercom, oh, the intercom.
Intercom,
I think.
yeah.
So they're doing 26,000 then, because it was like 13 for the internet, and now it's 13 something for the telephones. Yeah. I mean, the Zoom stuff, are you guys still, you're not doing any remote learning stuff, are you?
No, we still do some remote conferencing.
We
Right,
do-
but that
still-
can be done off a webcam and a standard internet connection. You don't have to have a Zoom branded phone to do it.
No, we do it over computers, we don't use phones to do the intercom, or intercom video conferencing.
Right, so why do we have to have Zoom, it's $11,000, almost $12,000 in Zoom video conferencing licenses?
Those are communication, they're licenses, they're accounts, they're not the actual hardware. So in order to have an account for Zoom, if you had done anything over the internet or over that requires video conferencing, you had to have your own account to do that. Those are our accounts. Those accounts give us access to Zoom video as well as Zoom phone. Then we have the hardware, which is separate, which is the phone. We don't have, not every teacher or every line has an actual phone. There's fewer phones, like the offices, that have those.
Are you
Is this-
questioning, do we still need 20 Zoom licenses?
Yeah, that's what I'm questioning, is if we're not doing remote learning anymore, why do we still have all this Zoom stuff?
As I mentioned, that's something that we're looking at.
Thank you. Okay, 38, 39.
What is pickup patrol dismissal software?
To get your kid after school, you have to call in and make sure you're on there, or you're not allowed to pick your kid up after school, pick up patrol.
Well, it's just a way for that, just a way for parents and teachers to know how your kid's getting home. If there's some kind of change, like sometimes I'm home, so he doesn't need to be a bus driver or a car rider.
Right.
It lets the teacher know, so that's how they get dismissed.
It used
Right,
to all
you're not-
be manual work.
Right, it's
of
more
somebody
efficient than
doing-
individual
Way
calls
more
into the
efficient.
office.
Right.
It's a pain.
If you're not on the list, you can't pick them up. I was told that by my wife. You can't go, you're not on
Yeah,
pickup
it's
patrol.
like emergency. services,
Better get on the
yeah. It's
list.
indeed.
I'm just picking up my kid.
Oh, God, I can't pick up the kids, I'm so sorry, honey. I gotta go. I'm not on pickup patrol.
Trust me, I just stay out of it.
All right, you're gonna have to stay at school.
You don't understand.
How many custodians do you have on top of 30?
There are three full-time custodians, plus then the
Plus the director.
facilities director.
So the director's on page 37.
Yeah. This stuff's always going up too.
Waste management brutal right now.
I was curious on, yeah, the line below that, 2022 actual, 64,000.
That's contracted services, that's not rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there was discussion, I mean, I wasn't here, but I know there was discussion that there were a lot more repairs that had to be made this past year than was typical. I don't know what all of those repairs were, but I know that that was a comment that was made, that there was an increase, a significant increase
That
last
is
year.
huge.
Yeah.
For that rubbish removal, have you guys talked to Sean over at the recycling center and found out if you guys can combine with them for disposal?
Ask this literally every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard yes.
Town offering to
And
pick
I've
up all our
seen
trash.
numbers going up 33%, so it might be a good
Town is
time.
not, the town is not willing to take the school's trash.
There we go.
We already have too much as it is.
They're looking for help,
That's your
part-time down there.
John, do you know how, you spent a day at the dump, how does it work with the trash compactor? Does that just keep compacting until it's all the way full, and then what? It gets towed away?
Then when it gets full, like it did a couple weeks ago, we actually good thing is at the end of the day, but there was no more that they could put in there, so we had to literally shut it off.
And then somebody comes and hauls it away when it gets.
It all starts
full.
piling up outside
Or swaps in
get the
a
new
empty one or
dumpster.
something?
I see
Right, they'll
that.
bring a different one, they'll
Happens.
take the old one,
That's what
bring
you do.
another one, or, I'm not there for actually
Right.
seeing the procedure of changing
So
over.
the problem's on Saturday when everybody goes, right?
Well, it's pretty much so, when, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, it'd be nice if we maybe, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, if we went to maybe just Thursdays and Saturdays, might be a little bit better. I mean, cut
And
some
nobody's
hours
using
a
it
day.
Monday through Wednesday though, right?
It's closed.
Can the
Can't afford to
town-
have the staff.
Yeah, maybe someone from the school can throw all their trash into that trash compactor on Monday, and then on Tuesday it can get thrown away.
Yeah, no, because that's an excess cost, so we have to cost tipping and trucking and for a new one, so we don't want to be anything with the school. The school can do their thing, the town will do our thing. We're not in cahoots with
But you
what
can
their
charge the
projects are.
town I mean, you can charge the school for it.
We don't wanna charge the school.
They're
They're doing well enough with their own budget and how they're paying stuff.
What, nothing to do with it.
All right, page 40.
No offense, good luck.
None taken.
Page 40, 41. So just
Say our
wanna,
poor superintendent has to take the trash home from the SAU office, I think, because there's no trash.
They can get a dumpster and put it right outside if they want. I'm sure you will not find us to be complaining about it.
Anyway.
I just made some notes on, let's see, 2620, 5622 about electricity, just that we had Eversource. And then another note that I made was about the propane, is that we were going to bid for the propane.
What was this lightning strike deductible, $80,000?
That's an excellent question. It's one of those lines I saw when I originally saw the budget, and I asked the exact same question. I said, what even is that? I don't know.
The
I don't have an
deductible we
answer.
paid on our insurance for when the building was stipulated.
But,
It's on 39.
yeah,
That's why we can't rush through here, because there's interesting things like this.
Yeah.
So,
but there's nothing in it for next year.
So lightning
Yeah, no,
struck
it
what?
shouldn't be, because it was like an insurance deductible.
Yeah.
Right, but there was obviously, there was actuals in FY '22, but, I don't
So
know.
lightning
Right, well,
struck and destroyed something? Is that what we're?
Yeah.
We had a deductible of 80, so we had to pay it?
What kind of insurance policy has an $80,000 deductible?
Straight.
I
If
don't
you
know.
fried every single computer in the school because
I-
lightning hit
Yeah,
on
fry
it,
it?
it's gonna cost you way over 80 grand.
Yeah,
Multi-million-dollar structures do, yeah.
yeah, they're self-insured, you know what I mean, some companies
Yeah,
are.
that's-
But that-
I can
that's
ask.
really
Cool.
good
Find out.
detail,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
we spent 80 grand on it.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the claim on that? What was the total claim? Because I know we're paying like $30,000 for building insurance every year.
Is that the right year? That's the part that I'm
I thought
confused
that-
by. That's just, I thought that was a few years ago. Yeah, I think
I
that's
don't,
wrong.
it could be. I'll check it.
Also
That
takes
was-
forever for insurance to go through and deductibles get processed. So it
No,
could
it
have happened
is.
3 years before.
You're not wrong there. Not wrong.
True.
Chris, did you guys ever figure out the propane issue with the flow rate?
We're still working on it. We did.
Yeah.
We're gonna, they're gonna be putting some regulators on all of the appliances that get that, which will then put a bit better control of what each appliance is using, so hopefully that will allow us to increase the pressure. And right now, unfortunately, the supply chain on regulators are pushed back. We were originally going to have it all in and done with what we're using. Wait for, you're gonna have to work to Christmas vacation because you have the building cleared for that. Unfortunately, the regulators are not.
All right.
This week rather. So right now the boiler is working.
Are there lightning rods on the school to prevent lightning strike damage?
The lightning strike that hit didn't actually hit the building, it hit the grounds and transferred into the building.
That's interesting.
It was really interesting. This is pretty, it was really pretty cool. We took all the kids out there.
Make a science lesson out of
It
it.
was awesome.
Hey.
It was-
That's what I just
Kids
saw.
right down the tree.
And I wonder if they got that in the science books.
Yeah, that's not in science books.
Updated.
All right, what are we on? 40, 41?
42, 43.
All right.
Still looking through 40, so.
All right.
Yeah.
What is next gen floor and bathroom care?
What page are you on? 40?
That's in 40. You know, like a robot cleaning the bathroom or something?
Must be studying these pages.
He's reading all the notes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 26, 20, 56, 10. Supplies custodial.
Oh, paint
The
repair.
effort to give as much information as possible to the line, including some name brands and, like Cleano Alma. Those are supplies.
The electricity, have you guys done anything to reduce electrical use?
lights are on timers. Just redid our gymnasium lights, used to put them on timers, and they're LEDs as well.
Okay.
So we're trying.
We did have that whole analysis done.
We
Someone
did all
came in
parking
and,
lots and-
yeah. and
When was
changed-
this?
Say that last
Changed
time.
everything out.
When was this?
Oh, gosh.
Not in the last few months.
No.
Yeah, because we had discussed with the Conservation Commission about possibly putting the outdoor lights on a timer, like 11 PM or something like that, to reduce electrical use and waste. And
Help improve the wildlife and stuff that's around there too, wasn't that turtles or
Yeah,
frogs
light
or
pollution or
salamanders
something.
or something?
It was to put them on timers and then have a motion, right?
yeah, motion. Yeah,
For
well, that
security
would improve-
purposes, if they were off, but if somebody's doing funny business, they come on.
They come on.
Yeah, I mean, now's the time to find more ways to save electricity if you can.
All right. I'll just say we'll go down to the last page, so if anybody has anything between, you know, page 41 or 45, because we're pretty close to the end, so.
General question on the buses, is there any way to get like, advertisements or something on the school buses for just a stream of income? I think I saw some school district, they were like,
Yeah, but that would give the income to Dale Transportation, not to us.
Yeah.
We don't own the buses.
Because we contract the buses.
Well, then
maybe
maybe,
they could give us a little kickback,
That would be nice.
something to get, you know?
But it's just tough, because they're the only ones around, so like.
We did do a longer, we originally were going to do a 3-year contract, and we agreed to a 5-year because they reduced the rate in some of the years by doing a longer term contract. And they were the only ones who bid on it.
What would you advertise? A candy
Coca-Cola
store?
banners right on all our buses, you know? Coke will pay for anything.
Liar's Paradise.
Liars.
True.
You're on the Liars Paradise run today. You're on the Demons run today.
Right?
I have to say, on page 42, under athletic transportation, I'm surprised that hasn't gone up.
We haven't had any buses available to do athletic transportation, so.
So we haven't used
We
any
keep holding
buses,
a
so it
number and then
doesn't
keep
cost
not
any
using
more.
it, is that
Okay.
what we're doing?
Pretty much, yes.
Hoping that we're
Saying
gonna
with
find
the
a
fuel
bus,
cost
and we never do.
increase and all that stuff, I just.
So I actually think under the contract that we signed, that it would be an increased cost, but we're trying to estimate based on usage, and because they don't have drivers available, we aren't getting transportation for
Okay.
athletics.
Just a thought.
I see you actually spent money on the homeless transportation in 2022.
Talking about page 43.
Yeah. I think it's the first time I've seen money
Yep.
expended on those, and it's gone over budget. Is there anything to report on that? Is that gonna continue? What is the circumstances on this?
That's a good question, because again, those were costs from last year. I don't know, I don't have the information on the current need at this point. I mean, I can certainly find out, but, I honestly don't know, moving
Right.
forward, what that will look like.
It was my understanding this is for people that have moved out of the district, but that we're basically busing them back in?
So it depends on the situation. There's a federal law called McKinney-Vento, which protects students who are deemed eligible under that statute as homeless. And there's certain criteria that you have to meet, that the district's established, that you actually meet the criteria. If you meet the criteria, then basically what you do, what's called a best interest determination between whatever that receiving district is and the sending district, to determine, you know, are you within a reasonable distance to be able to come back to, or to stay in whatever school that you were in, as opposed to going to the other school? Because more times than not, it's in the best interest of the student to stay. And so if in fact that's determined and there needs to be busing that's associated with it, usually there's a cost share between the other district and between two districts. But it depends on the situation. Obviously, it would depend on how far the districts are apart from each other, so there's a lot of variables. But.
I mean, it could go away with the in-between school year too, so.
Right.
Construction services is 0, is that because the planned things are being moved to warrant articles?
Well, I believe the construction services that were in the last 2 years were related to costs associated with the renovation project planning. And because currently we're not anticipating a warrant article this year for another renovation project, that's why there's no budget moving forward
Is
yet.
the renovation project you're mentioning, is that the addition that they wanted to put on?
Correct. And there were,
That didn't
and since
go
it, correct, and it was, because it was brought forth in a warrant 2 years in a row, there were there were costs, more significant costs in the first year in terms of developing those plans, and then I know they revised the
Adjusted.
plans for last year.
3, 4, 5
So there was
times.
still some cost, but not as much cost as the year before, so that's my understanding.
And wasn't there was like a warrant article to spend money on planning or something, that was like 130,000 or something? It was before your time.
Yeah, that I don't know. But
Yeah, there
Is
was.
that where this money comes from, or is that other money?
This 74 looks.
That was 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Might just maybe look at this.
I remember that.
Find out.
I'm wondering how much got spent on that whole
We
boondoggle.
had put out a warrant
Taking a
for
beat.
some grant funding that was coming in for 120, but we were gonna use 95, so I'd have to refresh myself on it, honestly. The 74 just doesn't go with me. Between all those numbers, I think we should look at it.
It's fine.
Maybe we can answer it.
I don't need an answer. If you actually do know the answer at some point, you can tell me, but it's
All
not.
right, yeah, I mean, I know we put the warrant out, and I know some of it was grants. And I know the 10 was for additional services to do the second year, update things, 74.6. Just not a number that's.
That's fine.
Even if it was grant, it should show.
It would show, but I just don't remember.
Actuals, and then it had been offset by unanticipated revenue. But yeah, I don't know where that number comes from. Well, some of it could have been the year prior, right? So part of the 90 could have been in the FY 20.
Oh, something
Yeah.
encumbered or something.
I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Sure. We're at the end, 44, 45.
Well, I think the best way to proceed at this point is, number one, is this board expecting a 4% cap? And I think we should vote on that.
I don't think we should vote on it, because we've already talked about it in previous meetings, that the 4% cap was only for.
Okay, I'm just
the-
throwing that out there.
Yeah. Was only for the town.
Okay,
That the Sue at the beginning said that they didn't know what we had in mind, so they wanted to stay around that number. I don't know what everybody else.
Well, I think most people were under
Assumed
the
it, yeah.
impression, most people assumed that the 4% tax cap applied to the school and the town.
Right,
I
tax
didn't.
cap.
I didn't
That's what
think that
thought.
when I voted for it.
That's what I
Have
thought
two
it
different
was.
ballots, why would you think that?
I didn't.
Why would any
I didn't
reasonable
assume that.
person think
No.
that? There's two different ballots.
Well, Sandra, when you're
It's
when
one
you go
tax
in to
bill.
vote, you
It's
get
one
you
tax
get pieces
bill,
of paper.
right? You don't have
It's
two
not like
separate
it's a
tax
separate
bills.
election.
No, you get
Separate
two
tax
separate
bills.
ballots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No.
all one tax.
Two
I understand.
separate ballots.
Right.
I understand.
Thank you, guys, you did a nice presentation,
Yes.
it was very well understood.
Does anybody else have any more questions?
So I'll just say that
Anybody
our
have-
board is going to be
I had one more
revisiting
comment. I
and
got-
revising
got
this.
to it.
This
Okay.
is not our
Yeah,
final.
that's
Yeah,
not
this
your
isn't the
final.
final.
I had one more comment. I didn't get to it.
Sure, sure.
you know, I threw that out there just to find out where the board is on this, because maybe I missed it somewhere along the line. but-
Okay.
And I'm fine, I think they did a great job.
I do too.
Putting this budget together, and I really thank you for all your hard work, so.
Especially because we just kind of threw you in there, so, and welcome to the board, so this
Thank
is
you.
what you have to look forward to.
Well,
So based on this, what is the rate then?
yeah, it's 4.7%
calculate the
increase
tax.
here.
That's not true, wait a minute.
She just said
Go-
we didn't
If you go back
tax.
to your summary of increases, under school
We
board
haven't done the
superintendent,
calculation of
No.
the tax rate increase.
No,
that's gonna go down 14,000, it's gonna go down to 3,000, you had mentioned earlier. So you cut out 14,000 off the top.
Well, no, the 3,000 figure I mentioned was that if in fact the default was put into place, that the 3,000 figure was for the default.
Okay,
The
okay.
figure that's in there is for the proposed.
yes.
Okay,
So I ran the numbers on the last page of the school's budget here, and so they're asking for a $716,000 increase off 15,100,000 essentially. Anyways, I did the math, that's a 4.7% increase.
Yep.
Now, they also they went through the same tax cap calculations
That's
and
right
stuff.
on there for you.
And,
The
you know,
4%.
and Carol had said earlier this year that, you know, they were hoping they were gonna come in at like 2.7 or three something.
Well, it's not finished, they're gonna.
I know it's not finished, and yeah, there's some things that can be cut. But if you look at their worksheet here, the delta to reach 4% tax cap is 155,815. So if you look at,
I know that I did not say that because we had not seen the proposed budget. So I may have said the default budget when we originally calculated it was in that range. But we
I
have
have
not seen the proposed
112,000.
budget,
Sure.
so there's no way that I said that.
sure,
You're making things
I
up.
have 100.
I'm not making things up. You've said like we came in at
We're
2 point
hoping,
something.
right.
Yeah, we
We're
said
hoping.
It was
we're
two
hoping
point six,
for.
two point seven,
right,
but I think she was talking
It's
maybe
nothing
about
was set in
default.
stone.
But I,
Right, no, nothing.
Anyways,
and
back-
nothing's in stone
2.7.
Back to
But
what I
that's-
was saying is they identified here that they could reach a 4% tax cap by cutting this proposed budget by $155,815. And if you look at the total proposed budget here, it's 15,824,000. So if you were to cut that by the 155,000, that would represent less than a 1% reduction in what they're asking for. So we could meet the 4% tax cap, and we could do it by only reducing what they're asking for by 0.98%. So less than 1% cut to what the budget total that they're asking for, and we can deliver to the taxpayers a 4% increase in the amount to be raised for
Can
taxation.
I address that? Because that's easy to say in a nutshell, but if you look at what the increases have come from, they're almost all fixed costs. So you can't just go in there and cut them, you know?
So, well, first I'll say to that is that we can just reduce the bottom line number by 155,815. We've done that in the past, and it took them about an hour to figure out how to come up with those changes. It's a less than 1% change
No,
to the budget.
I agree, I definitely, I don't know about you all, but I definitely agree that we should let them try to do the best they
Right.
can.
Yeah, I
This is the
think
second
there was-
time,
we
taking
identified
our
some stuff that they can look at.
suggestions. Right,
Yeah.
right, cause I don't wanna strong arm anybody into doing anything, let's give them a
Well,
chance to.
yeah, and we don't have to do it all of a bottom line cut either. There's some things in here that I looked
Definitely.
at that we can cut that are substantial. Like some of those contracted services things, this is what we ran into last year where Nate told us, you know, oh, well, if you guys don't fund it, then we pay for it out of grants. And so
Sure.
we said, well, then why do we fund it? And initially, the motion was to cut it to zero and have it all paid for by the grant, but some people didn't like that idea, so we kind of cut it in half down to 20 or 25,000
Right.
for that line.
Maybe COVID
Right?
funds can pay for
And,
stuff.
and look what happened. Everything worked out fine. It got paid for out of a grant. So we could potentially reduce that down to zero. It'll still get all paid for out of a
Still
grant.
got back 529,000, right?
Yep.
This year, and the year before that was 430,000 during COVID.
Yeah.
So,
And there's
there's
some-
500,000 in there somewhere.
And there's some lines in here like tech new equipment, 30,000. They said they got to dig into that. So that could probably.
I don't know where the 529,000 savings is from last year into, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
prior year. It's somewhere baked into it, you know what I mean?
I have
And
this
everything's going good at the school, right? I mean. Yep, but I mean, like, everything, we're doing good, right? Students are learning and you're providing a quality education, right? Right, so the cuts that we made to those items last year did not make an effect. And
There's no
not
funny
getting
time.
the, not getting the
I know
school
he's
edition
trying,
hasn't
but-
seemed to have affected the educational process, so.
Yeah, no, you guys are good. You guys are good to go. I don't think
Yep.
there's anything else.
Thanks for
The
coming,
only-
guys.
The only question I had is just, we're still on target for a final proposed budget by the 5th of
January 5th.
So can I just ask a question on that? So January 5th, you want to have two meetings, so this one and then one more presentation, and that's final, and you want to see revenues
Oh,
and.
and then we have the hearing on the 12th.
Hearing
So
on
I
the
don't know
12th.
that we need everybody on the 5th, because we would just present the changes. But the
But that
hearing
should be
is
the
on the 12th.
final, it should be the final budget.
Yeah, but the hearing is the 12th,
Right.
not the 5th.
But when,
Right, but we
when
want
would
the-
we show warrants? At the hearing or?
No,
at
we
the
should show
5th?
them before the hearing.
At the
So on the
5th.
5th, you're gonna wanna see the warrant articles, you're gonna wanna see tax impact, you're gonna wanna see
Yeah.
revenue.
Right, that's,
And then we have to
And your
do all of
binder,
that again
your
on the
binder
12th.
with all the items in it that you typically see.
We have to do all that again on
Articles.
the 12th.
Yep.
I think if we have any warrant articles ready by next Thursday, we could bring them here. We don't need everybody,
So we were
but
gonna get
drafts.
warrant articles, yep.
everything.
What else, including the warrant articles? I'm writing it down.
So usually you get your warrant articles, you wanna see your revenue, you wanna see your tax, estimates.
Can I request when you come on January 5th, can you update the numbers in here if you have better numbers for revenue and stuff? That'll just give us a number to work
Yes.
with down there. That'd be great.
The contract will probably be in there, the contract language, so all those warrant article pieces for the, and potentially the labor contract
And then
could be.
We haven't heard of anything from
when do we, I hate to bring this up, but when do we expect the negotiations to be done, or when should we expect to see them?
them. I think next Thursday, we'll
Next
have a summary
Thursday.
of, right? We can at least present a summary
22nd?
at that point.
Yeah, you got the,
So is that okay to put in the, agenda then? The proposed teacher's contract?
Not the actual contract,
But
but the summary of the
proposed-
cost.
The summary
yeah.
of the contract?
Yeah.
Question on the default budget that we have, this is a few weeks old. I think it said there was a,
There was a new one today that was in,
is it still going around 2%, 2.6% increase?
that's
or-
what I calculated it as,
So
yeah.
the default is coming in lower than the proposed.
Yes.
Usually that way.
That's where your
Sometimes,
2.6%
Not always.
comes
Not
from.
always.
I know not
A
always.
few years ago now.
If you're quoting me on 2.6%, it was the
It'll be
difference.
around there.
Thank you again.
Yep.
Thank you.
You got a
Thank
big
you.
job to
Thank
do,
you.
and we really
Really
appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for all your work. Chris, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. What's next?
Committees, right?
All right, yep, moving along to town stuff. You have stuff in your packets that we got. It should look like this for the town.
John, you just wanna tell us what changed since last time we saw it?
Oh, yeah, we don't want to put together many of those next year either. Cut that in like half, but we don't get fixed up anymore, we're all wasteful.
No. But is there anything, should I ask you after if there's anything else that needs to be updated?
So if you guys look at the back, you flip to the back of the, just go all the way to the last back, right? So the first one you saw, the town was at 7% change. Now we're at 5.1. So to meet the 4%, you know, we figured that we have to cut $64,000 more, because we already cut, we took 100,000 off the highway fund for the roads. We went down and cut a bunch of different smaller articles, taken off. I don't have that list here. But we're gonna do it a little different than the school board. We're gonna ask you guys for your opinion on where we cut the 64,000,
Okay.
all right? So, when you guys get a chance to look at this and cut back, you know, we can talk about it next meeting,
Okay,
and say, okay, these are the suggestions that we made, everybody get a chance to look at it, because ours is a little bit different from
sure.
from what we just looked at. It's pretty much a lot more self-explanatory, but if you have a question on that, you know.
Well, we've discussed most of this stuff,
Right,
so.
so
yeah.
it should be go through. We're gonna take your suggestions of where we can find that 64, because we might come up with 120, whatever. The Board of Selectmen will take your suggestions, we'll talk about it, and we'll narrow it down to get to our 4%, and then we'll come back with you and say, this is what the board wants to present to you.
I like that.
Sounds good.
So that's everybody's homework.
John, is there, you probably don't know this, it's too bad we don't have the town administrator, the landfill interest. So, is there a reason we didn't pay that one off?
You can't. It's like no, it's locked in, I thought. You're like locked into that.
Trust me, we try to pay off everything we
I
can.
know, that's why I was
Yeah,
just
we did
wondering why
that
we
last
still
year.
have.
Trust me, when we asked to pay off all the debt and stuff, you know what I mean, the
Yeah.
forest and stuff like that, the fire station.
Yeah.
Asked that, and then the selectmen said, one of them said, you can't, you're like locked in like some contract with the government or the state.
Doesn't
You know what I
surprise me.
mean, that's what I was told.
Yeah.
And as you guys look, some of the big ticket items that were here was our insurance for the town, when you're gonna go look at that, since that was a discussion we just had talking here. Our insurance went up over 11%, and then we hired four new firefighters, so we have to provide them with all insurance. So that's why when you see it says like it went up like 132% or whatever it is, you gotta figure in a large cost was the already increase that we had. So we will be shopping next year.
This is health insurance.
Yeah, we will be shopping next year. So we don't see this, but we're inevitable right now because we have to go into it and we can't start shopping until May or June, so we're kind of stuck. But that is something that's planned to be shopped next year, to a point where we're not gonna go find the lowest, cheapest possible one, because we want the people that are working for the town to have, you know, decent coverage. We don't wanna have to go and pay $1,000 deductible to hit
And
the
you don't
hospital.
want ours,
We
my
don't-
deductible's 3,000.
Okay, we don't, we're not.
You don't want reality then.
We're not paying, right, we're gonna try to find something that's sensible for everybody.
What
I
we're
used to have
doing-
0 25 years ago.
So we went back to Health Trust on that issue, and we are adding a high deductible plan as an option. But because we don't know an HSA, because we don't know how many employees will take that
Opt
plan,
out,
we
opt
did
into
not
that.
include
Definitely
that.
out for the HSA. That's a
Yeah.
great
But we
plan.
did
We
not
did that.
include any of those savings, because without knowing how many will take it,
Yeah, you
it
couldn't
is totally
possibly know.
speculative. So we did not
Well,
build that in. in
That
terms of
particular
savings.
line item took a lot of our attention to
But we are
find a way
going to add-
How
for
many-
next year in order to try to
Young and
John,
fix
how many,
that.
how many employees is covered by that line?
I'd have to look, I don't know of all who's taking it and who's not taking it.
Give a rough guess.
Well, that'd cover like
Well, you
3
go.
curriculum directors.
Funny.
6, 5, 11, 12, 13, we got a TA, 14, 15, 16. I don't think anybody at the dumps, so I'd say 16 employees or whatever roughly, give or take. Maybe there's a little more, kind of just did a
Gotta
rough
be more
cut.
than that, cause that's 25,000.
Again, I don't know how many's in the fire department, if we count if the part-timers have insurance.
Probably do.
So I was just counting full-time, just people that
yeah,
work.
they have their own, as far as I know, they have their own insurance, the 2 people are on it.
Right, so. But yeah, we're gonna look at that number, because we thought that was extremely, out of whack.
So
So,
can I ask
and
a
you'll see that one on there. You can ask anything you want, sure.
question? The facilities person that was gonna help maintain the grounds, is that,
That's still
using
a,
whether it's moved or it was eliminated? Did you move it to somewhere else?
well, we'd like to keep it, but we feel like it's probably gonna get, we left some stuff for you guys. just so
So it
you
says
know.
part-time facilities maintenance position.
Like the selectman's salary,
Moved to parks and
we get 0, do it for the town.
Oh, yeah, good, well, guess what? I
have
can resign too, so.
They have meetings all year round.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, I'll have 5 meetings and I'll be volunteering my time on Saturday for the town this week, so.
So you kept that in, cause it's,
That's how the founding
Salary
fathers
figure.
did it,
yeah,
right?
because you cut it by 15,000, so you couldn't have.
Well, they can,
What do you cut? What are
they're
you
able
talking
to
about?
pay
Sorry,
that
I
out
don't
of the
mind.
rec revolving fund, right?
The part-time facilities maintenance position. is
Yeah,
moved
well,
to
we said we cut like the, on that right there, we told like the lifeguards, we know we're never gonna find those. There's a $7,000 thing in there that we took out.
So you took that out. So I guess it would be helpful if the narrative got updated for that, because it's confusing what
Carol, the
is-
teachers, they don't work during the summer. Can they mow the stuff and be lifeguards?
if they get hired to be, sure.
Yeah, we gotta pay them though.
No, we already pay them a lot, like. they-
Oh,
they-
shit.
Yeah, but that's not in their contract.
You don't want them to work full-time?
Oh, we were supposed to be negotiating their contract.
They are negotiating.
So did all of this stuff come out? Cause that
I
only
couldn't
shows
do the job, believe
60,000.
me.
So all of these other things came out?
Couldn't walk in my shoes.
Well, let me go to that line item. Where are we?
332.
So John, you gonna look into the electric issue, kinda lock in?
The election officials? We had that, meeting.
Electricity.
Oh, electricity? I mean, we're stuck with, I mean, again, we'll entertain the same thing that you asked the school to entertain.
Well, if you can lock it in a rate and not see the massive increases
Right.
that are gonna happen, so.
So who's gonna do a majority of this work is when we hire a town administrator.
Yeah.
Because right now, we're not, and not gonna speak ill about our old town administrator, but, there's a lot of issues that this building here
I haven't even got to
needs-
CIP yet, so yeah.
This building here needs probably $70,000 worth of upgrades, which we don't have the money to upgrade.
Oh, that's not on CIP, and that's like right now. That's
So that's like stuff that needs, like, today.
Yeah.
That's why you can't use the bathrooms and, you know, here. The water pieces isn't working.
Yep.
The lights in the gym aren't, you know, need to be replaced that aren't working. There's lights in here that aren't even working,
And the
as you
oil
can
tank
see.
has- I have a
The
whole
oil
list.
tank system has to be all redone because it could be leaking, which could be an EPA hazard, which is on there
Yes.
because it's been buried in the ground for years. It's-
So it's, as
It's-
as
John,
tough
to
as it
change-
is to
To
do,
change
the-
my provider, it was a 15-minute phone call.
tough as it is to get the 4% down, there's a lot of things that are extra that are going to be coming up that are gonna be additional costs to the town, so.
Well, the fact is, I mean, again, when we cut down to the 4, and when we get to the 4,
So don't stop cutting once you get to 4%, is what you're
No,
saying.
no.
the
Anyways,
problem
John,
is,
I-
well, some too is, I mean, realistically, if you, how the budget works, and again, I'm open book on this, is, you know, in the years past, we've always kept a respectable budget at 4%, you know, 2%,
Yeah.
we've been pretty low on there.
Yeah, you
You know,
brought down a
this
lot
year,
last
one of our biggest, not a problem, is that we really had to incentivize and give the people that work for this town more money in order to retain their services of working for the town. That means the police department did, the fire department, the highway department, because they said, hey, guess what, if you wanna work with the highway department, everybody has to have a CDLB minimum. Well, CDLBs, drivers, they get paid pretty decent. And if you're an A, if you wanna drive the truck and tow the thing, you get even more money. So, I mean, these are things that we had to say, well, we can't pay this guy $18 an hour, because nobody with a CDLB works for $18 an hour. Right? So you had to increase, so this is where it drove a lot of our budget up,
John, I
to
got-
where we are very, usually normally fiscal.
I got a question for you on the election stuff. I know that,
We talked to Dee last night about that, I might
yeah,
about
and
that.
I'm wondering, did any of that change from the last time we saw this? Cause I remember there was money in here for contingency in case the primary got moved to 2023.
Yes, we did, she minused out a couple $1,000s, whatever, because we know that's not gonna happen. We know we're not gonna see it in December.
Yep.
That was a just cause of saying, okay, the chance of it, but the way the DNC's working and that's going, we know that's probably gonna be in January anyways at the earliest. So they did take that off there.
Okay, that's what I was
But
wondering.
they did, ask for an increase in the salaries for, their elected officials, but for the
Salaries for
supervisors,
elected
the
officials?
checklists.
Like,
There you go. So like $16 an hour. From there, or $12 an hour.
this is a
that they were for.
volunteer position, isn't it?
No, it's an elected position, but it's,
But you volunteer to put your name on it, right?
right, but you know, it's a 6-year term that they put in.
That what it means. what you think it
And, you know,
means.
if you look, there isn't a lot of people that volunteer, there's a lot of education that goes with learning that, to make sure our elections are done proper, because they are like making sure.
I don't think
everybody's
anyone's
voting
ever
is it.
questioned the legitimacy of an election recently.
Oh, no, I don't. Well, at least not in Nottingham, so let's just keep it there, so.
I thought the
But for the-
recount gave us 200 more votes, I thought. Didn't they have recount Concord?
For Nottingham? I
I
wasn't
thought,
paying attention to that.
for, between Nottingham, Northwood, and stuff for the state
For the,
rep.
for the state rep.
Yeah, Nottingham actually came up with 200 more votes. for
From
someone.
Nottingham?
From Nottingham,
Wow.
yes. I was shocked. And Northwood actually went down.
I
That's
was
something
not
you'd have
paying
to ask
attention to
them.
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that was, yeah, that
That
was
was,
because
they
they weren't turned
contested
in
the
right.
state,
They weren't turned, that was, that was.
He would know better than I would.
there was like
That was
200
from the
more.
early ones.
That
Yeah,
was the
That
reporting
was the-
issue, that they weren't reporting correctly.
Right, they weren't, that was before they were final.
No.
No,
They
I
got
thought they were.
recounted after
two-
they were final.
Yeah, there were 200,
I don't remember
new
hearing-
registered people suddenly.
I don't remember hearing that there was more votes, but I know there was changes in the ups and downs between Nottingham and Northwood. After the recount, there were discrepancies. But I didn't recall hearing that there was more votes on the
All
second
right.
count.
But we are eager to hear what you guys have, so if you could have this ready for next week, we can go line by line item.
Yeah.
And make every note of what you see and to where we go.
John, the planning board dues conferences, the $50, was that one, that membership, that can't be right, that's
No,
not
that was
the-
6,500, that's gone. We
Yeah,
cut
okay.
that right off
All
there.
right. I think you got all the easy targets.
I know.
Well,
Good work.
Okay,
I'm going to show that we did something, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, yeah.
okay. So if everybody's good to take a look at that, come back with some questions and some homework. We'll go ahead and move forward to the committee updates, so that way we can try to get out of here. Sandra and I met with CIP, that's where I was before the meeting today. Like John was saying, our previous administrator did a really good job of making sure that we, as Nottingham, didn't have a huge tax increase, but with that being said, there may have been some things that weren't taken care of or weren't addressed. So one of the big things that was talked about is that the town office is broken wastewater pipes clogging frequently. To replace those, they're thinking between 30 to 50,000. This involves digging up the floor from the police station, all the bathrooms, and maybe digging up part of the kitchen floor, which they talked about. We just redid the kitchen.
Yeah,
They just
I just
redid the
seen that,
kitchen.
yeah.
So they're talking about looking at other avenues to move the pipes, but that might be an increased cost with any,
I believe
you
so.
don't get directly from point A to point B, of
Right.
course, it's gonna cost more. And that's something that needs to happen now. That's not even something that was planned out on the CIP report that we're looking at. The second thing on the list is the town offices, 2 pressure tanks, excessive pump running, and premature burnout. They have an estimated cost there of $5,800. The town offices, underground oil tank is another thing that they're pretty worried about and wanting it to get looked at ASAP. They said that this is long overdue for closure, it's high risk of leaking, it's not leaking now, they
don't
know
want
that.
that.
It's a very large environmental cost, and I asked, why is this just now coming up? And they said, pretty much out of sight, out of mind. They didn't,
Well, they should know if you fill it and it's empty the next day.
yeah,
That's the problem.
they just didn't address it, so
We're not at that
So there
point.
wasn't a
it
problem.
wasn't addressed. There's no leaking, they said they for sure know that there's no leaking right now.
One thing that brought the attention was the fact that, and again, sorry, but I don't mean to cut you off,
No worries.
was when we, the generator that runs this
It
building.
malfunctioned and called on.
Malfunctioned.
Yeah.
And well, that runs on oil.
It had a
So-
call for a neighbor for like 3 or 4 days, didn't it? Or-
So yeah, it's.
At least a couple.
Started sucking all the oil and started
yeah.
running.
Yeah.
It ran for 3 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Which really took we weren't scheduled for and that made you now examine and say, wait a second,
How much are we paying for oil?
well, how much you're paying, look at the oil tank, here
Yeah.
it is. And I think it brought an attention, and it was only because of our new, the TA that we have right now, the interim one, who actually paid more attention to
He
it,
did.
because we can only see so much. We're not in this building 24/7, we're not here every single day, so we are gonna rely on our TA to start telling us, this is this, we need lights over here. I don't come here, I come at night, but I'm paying attention to all this stuff.
Your focus is on that, yeah.
But this is where we'd like to have a building maintenance guy, but do we have the money to afford to have a building maintenance guy that comes in here? Or can we hire him for here and then work for Courtney and then maybe work at the dump part-time? Can we find a guy that can do 3 jobs for the town of Nottingham and just pay 1 person?
Yeah.
Is that something somebody would like to do? We're trying to figure out that, cause there's
Like a
painting that
handyman-
needs to,
handyman or
everything we have to do in here for handyman services, we have to sub out, which is way more expensive than we had in somebody in-house.
Right.
Like, we have to change all the lights in the, gymnasium where you were over there, so we gotta buy a lift. Then we have to pay a guy to come with who's ever at the company, and then the guy
Deliver
to
it,
come,
yeah.
we might have to hire the
Rent
electrician
it.
to change the light bulbs, which that's gonna be
Have
expensive.
you asked the state if they can replace, are those LEDs in there?
Well, they're not as the efficient ones that we were gonna replace them all with. We're not gonna go up and replace 5 of them that are blown.
So at the
Without
univer-
replacing them all to the new
So
standard.
the state has some kind of program where they're going around and replacing all the lighting, and the fixtures they
Send
give
us
you
the link,
are-
man.
They're terrible. Like they're awful, but they're cheap, and that's why the state's giving them away. But they did all the ones over at the university, and they swapped out these fluorescents for LEDs. And I noticed over at the school, you guys have the same exact fixtures, and I don't know when you guys got them swapped in, but it was probably the same state program. I'm actually kind of surprised that these haven't all been swapped out.
But we
with
might
those.
change this whole room and this room might not be here anymore.
Yeah. But it might be, I can
There's
try to
another
find out what
Yeah, send it
state
in.
office it was, but they have some sort of rolling program where they're trying to go around and replace all the lighting at any.
You know, everything that comes into the general, email for the Board of Selectmen gets looked at by the Board of Selectmen. Anybody that has any suggestions on these items that you think's a good idea, you know, we don't take it lightly. We will look at it, we will put it in there, we'll set it up, and we will do. But there's a lot of stuff that we're talking about at every single meeting that, you know, we can't think of everything. I mean, we're trying to, but that's why we rely on, that's why we hope in our discussions with our new, you finish up and I'll go with my little spiel.
We need to, in regards to the oil tank, once they get it out, they wanna replace it, with 2 above-ground tanks, 330 gallons. Tanks and piping about 7,500, not included, small shed to secure and reduce extreme low temperatures. Closure costs could be 50,000, depending on the results of the study. Town offices water quality, hydrogen sulfate, it smells, 2 tanks for removal, estimated about $9,800. And this is where this is where I left it, came here, but they also have on the list is that the gym floor crack could expose asbestos, so that's obviously gonna need replacing. Town offices, outside lighting, front side near, cruisers. And then this is low opportunity, low priority, but still important, and again, not on the CIP. Town office lighting for gym, town office lighting, security cameras on field side, town offices, electrical services not up to code, they have several panels not up to code. Town offices gym ceiling, in the gym, right over there, there's a lot of panels that are damaged or just not there at all. And then town offices area to rear of building, and this note says there should be a study done as to what would need to be fixed. Roof mold mediation and material removal versus demolition with loss of space. And then the recreation office space, I think we talked about that last time, was 2 proposals priced out. 1 to move the meeting room to the community room, and the meeting room becomes recreation offices / storage. And the second is moving the recreation offices to the community room. And I think they touched on that last time we were here. So they're expecting about 100.
Kitchen?
Do what?
What does community room mean?
Yeah, it's the room that's down the hall on.
You walk
that-
down
on
the
that
hall, it's the
far
last
side.
hall, last door on the left.
Used to be the music
I've ever
room.
been in there.
It's a room about,
Yeah,
a
you're not missing
little
anything.
wider this, not as deep, but,
It's
oh, but
more,
still.
it's more
We're
square than this room, but.
No
all
windows,
same
it's right in the
size.
middle of the building. Used to be the music
We
room.
might be able to
Great
cut a
fun.
wall off
There's
there to
windows
open a
in
little
there.
wider, and then we
There's
have to put
windows.
we have to put
You
a
gotta take
second
that
entry
wall out.
door.
Well, yeah, well.
But the windows aren't finished,
Bigger than this
so
one.
it's like you're up.
It'll fit roughly, yeah, we think, because we did the size measurements, it should hold roughly about the same amount of people.
Why not stick the rec stuff in the storage back there? Why?
Well,
not-
because they wanna be able, cause
Fine.
there's more people that come in here for the rec every day, cause they support 300 students. The side door to go out right there into the fields where they do all the access, the fact that they can watch in it,
The gym, you know,
The
it
gym
makes
is-
sense, location wise.
but they also wanna utilize that as a private office for the rec department. So when somebody comes in with a family that needs, you know, financial assistance or whatever like this, they can have a private office to have conversations with, or if your kid's being,
I don't
it's
think you were
a
here for that
closed
last
private
meeting.
office for
Private
privacy.
needs.
Private conversations.
Exactly, stuff you don't wanna be talking in front of the other people or other employees or.
Right. So yeah, everything that I just read off the list was stuff that
But this would be a storage room
A
too.
through D. It was, it's pretty important that we address it now. And then pretty much we had to go through the CIP list, so like I said, I didn't get all the way through it, but I know there was some things that Ben was gonna take to the select board to move from this year to next year. For example, the flooring replacement and miscellaneous repairs at the fire and rescue department, maybe we can move that 12 grand to next year instead of doing it this year. Cause again, we don't know how extensive the damage is if it was just built not that long ago. So, I think this is a work in progress, but,
Did they have an amount for this year stuff?
well, I mean, they still had the school bond stuff in there from last year.
No, I mean, just for the stuff that the town thinks they wanna do immediately, they don't have dollar amounts.
No,
They were still
$100,000.
meeting after I left, and when most of the discussion between when you left and when I did was, how would they approach, getting the money that they needed for the emergency repairs? Was that going to be a separate warrant article? How exactly were they going to do it? And, the thought process that this is really emergency stuff that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And if it's trusted to just plain a warrant article or something, it could get voted down.
And they
So
wouldn't
a lot of
know.
discussion in different
Could be
ideas.
ARPA money,
Pardon?
could be ARPA money.
Right.
How much ARPA money's left?
You know what, I wanna tell you right now and say, I think there's like 150 or 175,000 or whatever in there, but
They're only expecting, well, it's just a guess, I don't think anything's been really priced out, but about $100,000 to get all this stuff done.
That was what was still going on when I decided I would leave that and come here.
So the CIP, I think, is gonna be a big deal this year,
there was
next year.
another discussion to spend 125,000 ARPA money to get a new, bucket, I'm losing my crap, for the dump.
Backhoe?
So, the backhoe dump, so they can crush the containers and stuff like this, but they wanna buy a new one, well, the CIS was buying a new one for $125,000. You know, cause it's a piece they need to run the facility in the dump, and they wanted to use ARPA money for that, so you can see where ARPA money is,
Spent, any money that's,
so.
And some
Spent right
discussion
away.
about, the Bobcat at the dump and buying
That's
a
what
new
I'm saying. The other
payloader
one's just broken,
as opposed to
this one-
buying the truck that they didn't buy last year, and whether that they really should be looking at, a 2-ton truck rather than a 1-ton truck
Right.
because of all the things that were going on with that, so,
Yeah, that's the highway truck you're talking about.
right.
Yeah, that highway truck is only used now to carry equipment. Not gonna be a sander, it's not gonna be a plow truck, it's just going to be an equipment hauler.
it's
Yeah, it was for like a
definitely-
plate compactor and smaller equipment and stuff like that,
That's all the new
right?
truck will be, that's why
Yeah.
they don't feel they need to go get a larger vehicle, because
It's gonna
they're
carry
li-
big equipment or anything on it.
you know, the small generator that they need the chainsaws, they need,
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's not gonna be designed to be
Yeah.
sanded, it's not gonna hold any of that dirt or.
Smaller stuff that guys can pick up, more or less.
Right. So you're sending 2 guys out in that truck instead of taking a 10-wheeler, or taking something you don't need, so.
So after Ben goes back and revises it, hopefully I'll have some more updated numbers for you guys for what needs to happen and what the plan is. I think we're gonna be meeting again soon. So, that's all I have for CIP, unless Sandra, you have anything else for CIP?
Like I said, the more conversation was about how to pay for it, and
Okay.
then they were going into the whole school thing, and then I realized that the whole school thing was going on right here, so I thought I'd come down.
Okay.
So I will have a list on next Thursday for us to go and show you everything that the Board of Selectmen already pre-cut,
Okay,
and why we did or what we did. If you guys have your suggestions of what you think needs to be slimmed down,
trimmed.
which would be nice, and then we can discuss exactly why. We'll go line from line, item to item.
Was this in the email?
Yep.
Is it in there as an Excel or something editable? Is it possible to get it as an Excel?
I'd have to ask.
Alright,
It was in there as a PDF, it wasn't in Excel.
alright.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cause if, I
I
think
just
it came
downloaded
from
all of them.
Excel.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
all
we
I
could
have.
get the original Excel file, then we
We
can,
play with the numbers easier.
yeah.
Right, yeah, that's so true.
Okay.
I didn't bother to ask the school, cause I
Send
know the answer.
send a message to the
Good luck,
TA.
Yeah, no, that's coming out of a whole software
message to
program,
who?
you're never getting that in anything usable.
Administrator.
I'll ask the.
Or ask for
Or
Betsy.
you wanna ask Betsy?
Sure.
Okay.
Just ask if she can have the
And then,
file.
and then John, like with the school, most of the stuff in there you can't do anything with, cause it's all
No.
contractual.
Right.
But the town, is there anything
And
in
you'll
here
see
that
stuff where it
can't be
says zero
touched?
and zero. I mean, there's a couple of items in there, you know, whether, again, we didn't want to touch any of the money that goes out for, the lake the lake and the milfoil, you know? We discussed it as a board and we said, no. But whether you guys want to take 2,000, 3,000 off, that's fine.
No, I'm asking, is there's things in here that literally legally cannot be changed?
I'm sure when you suggested, we were to send it to our attorney afterwards, we'll tell you if it can or not. Do I know per which items you can't? I'm sure health insurance you can't change, I'm sure. There's certain, you know, if it sounds like something you can't change, just figure you can't.
Postage you probably can't change, it's probably going up.
It's true.
It is, yeah, it did go.
Well, no, postage you could change if you move to
Don't
like
use it.
paperless billing for things and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend cutting salaries on anybody, but, you know, I did make suggestions to the board that this board of selectmen cut the salaries to $3,000 instead of $3,600. That didn't go over very well, but I said it
For
out loud in
the
public.
stipend for the board members?
Yeah, I said it out loud in public. And that's part of
There's
the
nothing
minutes
wrong
of the
with that.
meetings.
No, there's
Oh,
nothing
hey.
wrong with that. Sometimes you gotta throw
won't
spaghetti
do
to
it
the
for
wall
correct.
and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the
You know, but
answer's
you're
either
gonna
yes
see
or no.
electricity, you know, I mean, what can you do about that?
Yeah.
You know, it's just going up.
Just don't pay your bill.
Got the solar panels, yeah, saw that.
Workman's comp, I mean, again, that went down, but you can't touch that, you
Should
can't talk,
we be rolling in free power from
basically
our
all the
solar
insurance
panels?
departments, you can't touch any of that stuff, so.
On
Any
Easy
other
Buy 'em.
committees?
Do we know, I'll ask, you don't know, I'll
Facilities
ask
has
town
not met.
administrator what we're paying for electricity. Cause we're forced to buy it from the solar panel owners.
So nothing for that committee, any other committees?
Well, supposedly
A
someday
meeting?
that's gonna pay us
No.
back.
No, we just get to purchase used
Only if you
solar
own them, it
panels.
works.
Everybody's ready.
Yeah.
We have a next, I just wanna, next
They're
meeting,
obsolete.
next Thursday, 7 o'clock. Let us know,
Be here.
be here or don't, or be spare, yeah,
Be
I will
here.
not make
Or
this
don't.
Thursday, I will not make the January, Thursday, 18th meeting.
okay,
All right,
thank you.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion adjourned.
All in favor?
All in favor?
That's always unanimous.
Time to go home.
10:01.
10 o'clock.
I'm back tomorrow at 10 AM.
Uh-oh, who's got beer can?
Kicking around your empties,
I
Michelle?
bought the Nottingham beer today, I haven't tried it, I want to. That was pretty cool.
Oh, we're doing interviews for the town administrator. We had 2 on Tuesday, and we have 2 tomorrow morning. So we have 4 people applying for the town administrator job.
Do they all have experience?
Come and scare 'em.
3 out of the 4.
Wow, are they all from, like, they're actively doing it elsewhere?
Yep, 3 of the 4 are. I can't tell you anything about it because it is not public, so, but